One championship, 8 races, legendary circuits, drivers from all over the world, one family, one passion, endurance racing. Welcome to the most professional endurance racing series for all drivers, amateurs, semi-professional and professional. Welcome to the 24-hour series powered by Hankook. Can you beat the challenge of 8 endurance races? Will you become the 24-hour series champion for 2021? This is endurance.
It's the 7th running of the Hankook 12 Hours of Hungary across the weekend of the 2nd and 3rd of October, and this will be the penultimate round of the championship after some very entertaining outings earlier on in the season, not least a month ago at Barcelona, where we were racing twice around the clock, and a win for Herbert Motorsport, their 3rd of the season. But beautiful conditions not far from Budapest, which will be our 6th round of the season, starting off back in January with a GPX Racing victory with their Porsche in Dubai. Then we moved on just a month and a bit later to Mugello for the 12 hours there, the traditional 12 hours held in the 3rd month of the year in Tuscany and spread across 2 days, a split race, as this weekend's is as well, though very slightly different format rather compared to the 3+9 that we had in Italy. It was a straight through 12 hours at Circuit Paul Ricard in April, another split race in Germany at the Hockenheim Ring and the 3rd weekend of May, then Barcelona just about a month ago, and now here in Hungary, which hasn't featured in a 24H series calendar for 7 years. And finally, the one that we're all looking forward to is the trip to Sebring, to the famous concrete in Florida for the 24 hours event there during November. So hopefully all of the cars, most of the cars that are entered here this weekend can be retained for Sebring, plus an extra sprinkle, I'm sure, as well, because it is much anticipated, particularly for a lot of the home teams from North America as well. But the 12-hour points that are on offer, just the same as it was earlier on in the year at Mugello and Hockenheim, and there are a number of cars that are eager to, if they can, seal the championship this weekend. Of course, there are increased points, though, on offer the other side of the Atlantic for the North American round, so it might be a bit tricky for TCE and GT Series points to be sealed here in October. We've got 2 races in one, as usual, the TCE Series and the GT Series, and the most popular class being the GT3 category. So SP9 as it is called elsewhere, but GT3 these days in Creventic, and a good mixture of cars, including a couple of Porsches, a couple of Audis, a couple of Mercedes too, which will be the best machinery around the twists and turns, and the slight gradient increase as well of the Hungaro ring. It'll be Johnny Palmer and Peter Snowden to call the first 2 hours this Saturday afternoon/evening, a 4:30 start local, so that's in just over 25 minutes time. But before we deal with the grid itself and look forward to the race start, let's head down to the front row and to Lukas Gajewski.
Thank you very much, Johnny, and welcome down from the grid, which is almost ready to go for the first 2 hours of racing. Creventic and the 24H series are back in Hungary in fitting style. As I would say, over there is our pole setter, the Herbert Motorsport Porsche. But now next to me is the National Hungarian Folklore Ensemble to kick us off here on the grid. Can you please say welcome to Budapest in Hungarian?
I don't speak English.
Well, you need to speak Hungarian.
Yes.
Welcome to Budapest.
Welcome to Budapest.
In Hungarian.
In Hungarian.
Okay, that works brilliantly. I think the performance will be much, much better, I can tell you. Guys, it's all set up, of course. We have a lovely grid, nice weather, and although now it's about the ceremony, it will be quite an interesting race in terms of strategy as well, because it's only 2 hours today and then another 10 hours tomorrow with a split race format. We're going to have Parc Fermé tonight. It's a question of, do we come to the pits? Do we fuel again? Do we not do it? It will be quite an interesting evening, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Guys, are you ready down here? I think so. So let's kick off the grid celebrations with your national Hungarian folklore ensemble. Very much. What a great opening to these 12 hours at Budapest. Thank you very much. Johnny, your expert commentary on this show program, or can we just go on with the grid procedures?
Both television and radio audiences here, so I did wonder whether I needed to just cut in and start to do a commentary, but I honestly have no idea what any of those moves were called. They looked fabulous, and hopefully you got a flavour of the sounds as well, with the tap dancing, the clapping, the whooping and hollering. And Snowy and I were trying to copy that situation in our commentary box, were we not?
We did. We had to sit down eventually, but
yes,
I did think they say, Johnny, that anything can happen in endurance racing, and that's just proven it.
So let's go back to Lucas for more of the ceremony before we get this year's race underway.
We'll do that immediately, because please listen, here is the Hungarian national anthem performed by Benjamin Barry.
Isten áld meg a magyart, jó kedvel bőséggel, nyújtsd felé a fidőkart, a küzd ellenséggel. Ma sors, akit régen tép, az rávig esztendőt, megbenhette már a nép a múltat s jövendőt.
Thank you very much, Benjamin Barry, with the Hungarian national anthem. Johnny, I think we are perfectly ready for the grid. Behind us we have 16 cars, GT cars, TCE cars. Any remarks from you, or shall we find our pole setter?
Thank you, Lucas. Yeah, a brilliant performance from Herbert Motorsport to go 1-2, and the second pole position of the season for car number 92. But it is 91 that has been doing a lot of the winning so far this year, with 3 victories, 2 of which have come in the 12-hour races that we've already had this year. Interestingly, 1 in the split and 1 in the straight-through 12-hour race that we had at Paul Ricard. So you sense that from a strategy point of view, they can adjust depending on the format, Peter Snowden.
It's looking strong, isn't it, Johnny? You've got to say, and of course, they've got a super sub, Daniel the Machine Alleman, in the first car there, the number 92 car. He's floating between the 2 cars, as we saw at the pit interview when Lucas took our pole position man out of the driver briefing, which was very diplomatically pointed out to Lucas at the time. But Daniel Alleman is floating between the 2 cars. He's got the strength to go in one or the other and either put the lap in. And what was the phrase he used? He's driving the cars from sunrise to sunset.
Yeah.
So he's just always in there. He just knows it and go and drive the car. So what a position to be in. As if Herbert Motorsport haven't got a strong enough lineup anyway. And you've got your floating driver, almost like your joker card, for the want of being able to play a joker. Is Daniel Alleman, of all people. And it looks like, according to my timing screen, it looks like he's probably starting driver in that pole position car.
Okay, so yeah.
With Ralph Bone in the sister car alongside.
So he will get at least 1 stint out of the way early on in this 2-hour section, and then it depends actually how they want to split it. But I suppose being from the same team, they can work out which car Daniel Alleman will be in. Bearing in mind, you have to take 50% of the previous stint as a break before you can get on board either of the other cars. More of the native music I can hear in the background. Let's get straight back to Lucas.
Yes, to the man I just took out of the driver's briefing after qualifying. Marco, you still had some strategy things to sort out after your pole position. Please give us an update. How will the beginning of the race look like for Herbert Motorsport?
So finally we have decided that Jürgen is starting the race, and now when we went through the starting grid, we saw that many of the amateurs are starting. So that hopefully keeps us in the loop to stay in the lead lap. Jürgen tries to have a nice launch, but as we know, Ralph is quite strong. Probably he will take over the lead. And then we have to manage just to stay there. And then it's either me or it's Taki who's going back in the car, because Stani is driving then over there. So that's why the only thing I can't tell you who is next on the car today. It's either me or Taki.
And will it be one pit stop only for you today, or is it still a possibility to come in just before the 2 hours end?
If worst case scenario and we go a lap down, then we will refill that we have a full car by tomorrow's start. If we can stay in the lead lap just by that, we do one stop. So also it's still an open game. But if we are comfortable, I think you will see us stopping twice. If we are like on the limit to fight for the lead lap, probably one.
Marco, thank you very much for the update and all the best for the race. So there is your pole setter, the number 92, Herbert Porsche. Very nice lap from Marco Seifert in qualifying. And as we just heard, Jürgen Hering will be the one starting it. This is the sister car with Ralph Bohn already being ready to go. He will climb into the number 91 car to take the start. We'll just get a quick update from him. Ralph, just some words before you climb into the car. What are your expectations for the first stint today?
Sorry, I couldn't understand your question. The music is so loud over there.
What did you say? I mean, your expectations for the first stint today?
Well, the expectation is that we have a good first corner. So this was not all the time the same. So I hope for the good first corner, and then let's see. It's only 2 hours today. The rest will follow tomorrow.
Will be a good one. Thank you very much, Ralph. Guys, I'm going to throw it back to you, and I think we will head down towards the TCE pole sitters to get the quote down there as well.
Excellent stuff. Well, I think Ralph's point is moot, considering what happened here on the 1st of August during the Hungarian Grand Prix, because it came off the back of Silverstone and the antics at Copse Corner. And it's fair to say, Snowy, that the run into that first corner on the Grand Prix wasn't the cleanest.
No, I just Ralph Bohn there, just fantastic. What are your expectations? My expectations are a clean first corner, straight out with it to the point. There may only be 16 cars on the grid, but it is still a 12-hour race. There's only 2 hours today, and that was exactly what we were saying at the beginning of the show, wasn't it, Johnny? That it's going to affect people's mentality, psychology, team strategy. Almost, you just mentioned Formula One reference there, where they had a Grand Prix just over a month ago. It is effectively a bit like the Formula One sort of Italian and British sprint races at Monza and Silverstone. It's a sprint race effectively today. I know it isn't billed at that. It's a 12-hour race. But physically, it's a 2-hour race on track today. Rest overnight. Start again tomorrow. And again, interesting, you heard the strategy there of filling the car. Can we do 1 or 2 stops? Where do we want the car with fuel? If we can stay on the lead lap, we'll do what we can. But most importantly, they're thinking already before they've even started this 2 hours, how much fuel do they want in the car to start that 10-hour bit tomorrow? And that's the key bit. So today is really key to how they start the race tomorrow and where that can play out, because it's a 10-hour run tomorrow, which is, no mean amount of time in these cars. And they're going to do hundreds of laps around here. You've got to get the car in exactly the right condition. So today is almost a sort of, it's almost like a waiting game, just sort of play it through. I think they won't do a final sort of strategy until we're about an hour and a half in.
Yeah, I mean, the name of the game is trying to stay on the sharp part of the grid as long as possible, and you only need to do that for 2 hours. It's a relatively short circuit, though, 2.6 miles. Does that mean it's easier to fall off the lead lap? Well, of course it does, but from a strategy point of view, let's wait and see. So TCE series, as the grid starts to be cleared, let's get an update from Lukas Gajewski.
Yes, Sepp, our cameraman, just tried to catch the pole position banner over there, which is already being brought away to prepare the start. Emil Heyerdahl doing the same. Emil, I haven't met you after qualifying. I think it was you doing the pole position lap as well.
Yeah, that's correct. So First of all, it was a really good lap, I would say. So, yeah, really happy to be on pole, finally, for the first time in this series. So, yeah, looking forward to the race.
And now you're going to do the start stint as well. We were chatting to the GT guys who will definitely have to come to the pits. How does it look like with your TCR cars? What about the strategy for the first part of this race?
Well, we definitely have to go to the pit. It's the same as GT cars, so, yeah, will be interesting.
So it's a longer stint for you, but possibly definitely a pit stop for you that you have to take.
Yeah, it seems to be, yeah.
Okay, and very interesting thing is your second car of the Autorama team, special livery this weekend of the used white and red colors there. You'll definitely holding thumbs up for them as well?
Yeah, for sure. It's a good solution, so for sure we are trying to do our best, both of the cars, so yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.
Emil, I'm going to let you focus to the race. Thank you very much. I'm just going to show you the rest of the grid because this is rather interesting. We have plenty of time tomorrow to talk about it. Ivo Broikers and his family for the first time ever with the Audi RS3 LMS car in TCR instead of the Cupra or Seat or however you want to call it. And this over there, the green VW, that's the second car of the Autorama team in a rather unusual green livery. You can see the Greenhope logo on the car. They are effectively racing with money that is donated for each lap they do during the course of the 12 hours. We're going to hear more from the team, I think even maybe today or at latest tomorrow. A very interesting project, and we're definitely going to look forward to see that car for as long as possible. I think, guys, we are ready to go for 12 hours of racing then.
Lucas Gajewski doing a splendid job on the grid ahead of the start then of the part one of this weekend's race. 120 minutes to get through today, and then a much longer run tomorrow from 8:30 in the morning through till 6:30 at night. So Herbert Motorsport had locked out the front row earlier on today in the 30-minute all-in qualifying session, a 144.217 set by Marco Seyfried, and it is Daniel Allemann underlined there. But I think the news from Marco was actually that Jürgen Hering is due to start that car for the first hour or so. 145.003 set by the number 91 Herbert Motorsport Porsche that leads the championship, and Ralph Bone labelled as the starting driver. It was an Alfred Renauer time, though, that put that car in second position. MP Racing's number 58 Mercedes will start from third with Thomas Gosner as the starting driver. Charles Espenlaub installed of one of the four Americans due to be driving the CP Racing Mercedes number 85 from fourth place. Fifth and sixth will be a combination of classes. GT3 BMW M6 from JR Motorsport, car number 2. Ten Van Fleet to start that alongside the RD Signs Racing team. Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo, car 720, which is in the GTX category. The 991 pole sitter is the 955 Vili Motorsport by Ebi Motors, car from Romania, and that's Fabrizio Broggi to start the Porsche Cup car alongside Rutronic Racing by TECE Audi R8. They obviously struggled a little bit in qualifying. On the fifth row, in the GT series, it's the 701 Vortex from France, from Team Vortex V8, the car known as the 1.0. And Gilles Courtois, who did the qualifying, will start car 701 from 9th, alongside John Miller in the 438 ST Racing BMW M4. We think that car had dramas during qualifying. And the 500 car collection Motorsport Audi, interestingly, starting from 11th. That's not where it qualified, but Estonian Martin Rump will start the brand new Audi that is only legal to take part in competition from the new year. Car 101, Red Camel Jordans.nl, Audi RS3 LMS, which is not the car that took pole position, interestingly. Starts from first. So where is car number 1 in all of this? 188 AC Motorsport starts alongside in the TCE series, and we will deal with the rest of that class in a moment or two. The 955 Vili Motorsports Porsche will provide one viewpoint from the middle portion of the grid. And another car that will carry an onboard camera is the 438 ST Racing BMW that will be started by John Miller. We'll see Samantha Tan at the wheel of this car a little later on, but they have been full season entrants, and a home race sort of to look forward to, although they're a Canadian team, but they'll be heading to North America in just over a month's time to Sebring. The Red Camel Jordans.nl Audi, and I need to get that into my mind, labelled in second position on the grid, interestingly, so I think that might have just been a slight glitch with our graphics. The number 1 Emil Heyerdahl started Golf is definitely up ahead of it, just that it was missing from that particular slate. And the RD Signs Racing Team Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo with Nicolo Michelin, that will start from 6th in the division and 2nd in class, so 6th on the GT Series grid, with the BMW M6 just up ahead of it, the car that is run by the Dutch squad JR Motorsport and entered by the team manager Ted van Vliet, who also starts the car. So we'll have a variety of viewpoints if you are joining us on the live stream, and a reminder that you can find pictures to go with our radio commentary via the radio-show.co.uk website. Eric Munkhoff will start the Munkhoff Racing BMW M4 GT4, which is a TCE series entry. And another car that we will be highlighting through the course of the race is the pole sitter in the TCE series, Emil Heyerdahl, who set the time earlier on in the Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing Volkswagen Golf GTI. 2 of the Autorama cars sported from that crew, but one with a very different paint scheme, as Lucas was pointing out on the grid. Milos Pavlovic starts the number 112 car then, and this is the Golf that is almost in the Krone Racing green. There are similarities to be drawn there, and the starting driver having a similar coloured race suit as well, working hard at the wheel, zigzagging that car as they head towards turn 14, which is the final hairpin to draw the lap to a close. We'll be going around one more time. Gilles Courtois, by the way, who starts the number 701 Vortex V8 1.0, will also carry one of our cameras this weekend. So we've got just about every class covered there, and around about every area of the grid as well to look forward to over the next 12 hours. It is a beautiful day at the Hungaro Ring, and already the shadows showing signs of starting to lengthen, even though we're barely 4:30 just yet. And 2 hours of running to look forward to today, Snowy.
Well, you mentioned about the shadows there. Of course, it is 4:30 in the afternoon, so yeah, it's an interesting thing. And they haven't got to run into too much. I'm not quite sure how much the light will change in this part of Eastern Europe now at an hour ahead of UK, so 4:30 start. We're going to be obviously 6:30 finish. So I'm just wondering how much, because there's definite shadows lengthening over the circuit there. It's an interesting one. That we'll keep an eye on that as to what one is. Also, you mentioned there the car, the last of the GT cars. In fact, no, it was penultimate of the car. John Miller starting the 438 ST Racing BMW M4 GT4. That was the car that we mentioned in qualifying. Was at the very bottom of the grid and didn't seem to have much of a lap time. So I'm not sure whether that was a technical glitch as to why that was down there, but we were keeping an eye on that because it looked like it wasn't taking part, or certainly hadn't really qualified well, whereas it appears it has indeed. So that's good to see that up there, right where it should be. 2 formation laps. I believe sunset, we're getting an update. Sunset is about 10 minutes before the end of the race.
Ooh. Before the end of the race.
I think it's 18:21 local time is what I'm being advised.
That's interesting.
In Budapest.
Yeah.
I want to say it in 2 bits like that now because of Lucas's fantastic graphic of TCE cars one side of the river in Buda and GT cars the other side of the river on his map. If we saw earlier or heard his little bit there, and Pest on the other side. So all the Buda cars are TCEs and all the Pests are GT cars, according to Lucas. You heard it live from the pits.
Well, I'm sure a lot of the TCE runners will be calling GT3s pests by the end of it, because I anticipate quite a bit of lappery to take place around this place.
Available.
True enough, yes, but I mean, we try not to neglect the TCE part of the grid that will have to be fighting in amongst their own ranks, but also have eyes very much on the rear view mirrors on the vastly approaching GT cars, because they won't take very long at all to catch up on this 4.3 kilometre circuit. We haven't raced here in Hungary as part of the Creventic 24H series since 2013, but a very welcome return to the championship for our final race of the year in Europe. And then we look forward to the concrete at Sebring. But before that, 12 hours of Hungaroring to unfold in front of us. And here, live on RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels, it is a good getaway for Jürgen Hering, although there was almost a collision heading into the first corner. And the MP Racing Mercedes gets a good run indeed on the CP Racing rather, on the MP Racing Mercedes. And an overtake early on to put that white, red and blue Mercedes into second position. It's got ahead of the 91 Porsche from Herbert as well. So Herbert 92 from Mercedes 85, and then the 91 car that started on the outside of the front row drops to third, Snowy.
Yeah, well, it's because the MP Racing number 58 Mercedes did get into the side of the second place car, the 91 Herbert Motorsport car. We think Ralph Barn at the wheel of that car, but there was definitely some contact. The lead car, the pole car, the number 92 car was clean into turn one, no problem at all. Then quite menacing behind was the BMW. The M6 of Ted Danville, I think, at the wheel of that, the JR Motorsport M6, which started fifth. That was menacing for almost fourth, trying to come down the inside by the pit wall. Didn't quite work out. And then the Mercedes that got involved in that was certainly the MP car, got involved with the second place Porsche. That allowed the CP Racing, Charles Espinal driven Mercedes, to get up from third position up into second place. He actually had a little bit of a bog down at the start and lost out initially, but it all planned out in the end. So it was a relatively clean first corner, a little bit of elbows out, a little bit of sort of little polish out type bodywork to be sorted, I think, probably later, but no major bits flying off or cars rotating around as we saw at Ricard earlier in the year when we did the race there. That was a fascinating first corner, possibly not from a team perspective. Team manager's perspective, but it is Herbert. So we've now got Porsche from Mercedes, Porsche, Audi. This is the Evo car, the SP4 category car, SPX as we call it elsewhere, the number 500 car. That's Martin Rump at the wheel, the car collection Audi. That's the R8 LMS Evo 2. And the Mercedes giving Porsche a hard time. Now, we talked about the Herbert Porsches just being metronomic and clockwork and doing what they said on the tin for the races this year. They've won 3 of the rounds so far this year. And they were at the 24-hour at Barcelona. I think they led the opening laps and were leading it at the end, so it was that metronomic. It really was the definition of it. However, CP Racing, Charles Espinal, has a very, very different take on this race. We mentioned earlier about this being a 2-hour sprint race, and he's taken the lead. He's got it. He's gone down the inside, starting onto the second lap there. The Mercedes has got down and taken the lead. So never mind being a sprint race, they're setting the bar now. It's one heck of a way to set the grid almost 2 hours ahead of the race finish for tomorrow's 10-hour race, remember, Johnny?
That was all about the drive out of turn 5 and into the chicane at 6 and 7. And Charlie Espinal, who's really charged away from his qualifying position, wasting absolutely no time at all. Jürgen Hering, Ralph Bone, Martin Rump are the next cars through. And Martin, new to the 24H series, just 25 years old from Estonia, but capable, I would say, of getting by these two Porsches. Looking at the speed of that 500 car, he's way up the curb there, heading through turn 13 was Martin Rump. Again, later on the brakes, and Ralph Bone said it was all about surviving the first corner of the opening lap. Well, we're nearing the end of lap 2 here, and under massive pressure, Ralph Bone in an awkward position because he has teammate Jürgen Hering up ahead of him. But he's being closed in upon here with a pincer movement by the car behind Martin Rump, and that's a good move into the first corner. I think Ralph needed to do that so that he would buy himself some space, and the gap that's created by Ralph Bone on Jürgen Hering car almost exploited by Martin Rump, who tries around the outside as they head for turn number 2, and I think he might be able to pick him over in the 500 Audi. If he can stay there, that'll give him the inside line at turn 3 and bags himself third position.
Well, I was just going to say before that happened, Johnny, that he needed to let him through, let his teammate through, and then start defending and play rear gunner, if you like, to the Audi. But Martin Rump is there, 25 years old, and not displaying any immaturity there whatsoever. Can't quite get the job done. Nearly followed Ralph Bone through, which would have been absolutely perfect for him. But he needs to get that Audi up there ASAP. So what does he do? Sticks it down the inside of turn 2, which is a right-hander. We've got a long sweeping left-hander for turn 3, and he goes all the way around the outside. So the new era, we were talking about that a little bit earlier on the Audi, certainly working to full effect now. I think we've got a little bit of fuel or something, or leaking fluid leaking from one of our, just trying to see which car, I think it's one of our, is it one of our TCR cars there?
Yeah, it's the 101 Red Camel Audi.
Yeah.
Which, like you say, is trailing
Audi
something.
RS3, it's obviously depositing quite a lot out. I don't think there's any damage to it, but the right rear, there's something, might be, I wouldn't have thought it had been overfilled with fuel. It's not really the kind of things you do overfill with a bit of oil maybe, but
it's
certainly
appearing
on
again.
left-handers, it's coming out, it's obviously sloshing across to the right-hand side, so it does look like the 101 Red Camel Audi RS3 depositing quite a lot of fuel onto the track, which people behind will be able to see, but of course it will change how it works on the track, the friction on the track for you, the grip.
So at the start of the race, the Porsches did seem to get away reasonably well, but then a very late dive into the apex from Ralph Bone. The Mercedes was already there, and that's what slowed the green 58 Mercedes up, exiting turn number 1. It's very tricky to call that one because the Porsche, I suppose, had to be defending into the first corner. Mercedes spotted the opportunity, but
I think
maybe wasn't fully alongside.
I think, to be honest, not trying to throw anybody under the bus there, I think the Mercedes just came from a little bit too far back. If you looked at the CP Racing Mercedes, that just stayed absolutely central down the track, as in, okay, first corner, let's all pan out, you just all make your own decisions and hopefully make your mistakes, but in a sporting manner, obviously. And the other Mercedes just went down the MP Racing version, and Thomas Gosner just went down the inside, and he didn't lock up, but he arrived pretty well at a pace, and the Porsche was there, and it did just clatter into the side of it. Mercifully, it was a side-by-side sort of door handle to door handle type thing, but that did slow the two down, which then allowed the CP Racing Mercedes, Thomas Gosner, just to get round the inside and rejoin. That car's dropped down to 5th place now. It's sorry, that car's in the lead now. I'm talking Thomas Gosner car that's in 5th place. So Mercedes is at the front, the all-American driver lineup in the number 85 GT3, leading from Ralph Byrne. I would not have thought, Johnny, and put my house on it, I might have bet your house on it, it's the kind of person I am, that you wouldn't have seen a Herbert Motorsport Porsche at the top of the timesheets.
No.
All being deposed this early. Not saying they're guaranteed to win, but I wouldn't have put money on it being deposed quite so soon. Yours, yes, that's different.
Well, it's an interesting tactic from CP Racing's point of view. Remember, it's Charlie Putman's team, but they've decided to put silver-rated Charles Espenlaub in the car for the opening stint. So on the ratings alone, you would have expected Espenlaub to be able to outpace Ralph Bone, who's bronze, and Jürgen Hering, who's bronze. It's side by side, by the way, for 3rd position in the TCE part of the race, with a couple of TCRs going hard at it. Interestingly, there's a message on my screen to say that the team manager of AC Motorsport, car 188, must report to race control immediately. Now, it crossed my mind, had we identified the Audi RS3s incorrectly? I'm still pretty sure it was the 101 that's trailing a bit of maybe fuel overfill rather than the 188. But there are, I mean, I was viewing it from a camera on one of the cars in the race, but both Golfs have onboard cameras, so I'm still pretty sure
I think
it was the 101, it was the all-black car, rather than the 188 that has the purple detailing on the rear. So I think that message about team manager of AC Motorsport is unrelated to the fluid being dropped.
I'm not convinced. I think we were watching the 188 AC Motorsport Audi from the 101 car.
Okay.
It was 101 on the screen for the in-car camera. I think it was the 188 that was just ahead of it that's now dropping down the order.
I thought we were seeing the 111 from the 112 of Milos Pavlovic. So, yeah, one of us is correct.
We'll just put a Perspex screen in the commentary box and have different views there.
Yeah, I can put your house on the fact that it was a 101. No, I'm
touche.
I'm not as confident as you are. Anyway,
property development.
Definitely 85 car leads, because that car is in the white, red and blue colours, and with Charles Espenlaub piloting the AMG GT3. He completes 5 laps, although very late on the brakes there was Ralph Bone, and trying to find an inside line. These Mercedes have very large rear diffusers, but there was almost a big chunk taken out of the diffuser of car 85 as Bone, his brake pedal got very long indeed, and when you consider how early on in the race that was more of a misjudgment rather than the equipment available to the German. But thankfully, contact, I think, was avoided. Door left a little open into turn 1. Cigarette paper between them, but no less than that.
I would suggest it was a very thin cigarette paper.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that contact was avoided just as they now head into the approach to turn 6 and 7. And there are tyre stacks certainly on the second element of that chicane, so you can't cut it short, even if you're trying to pull out a cheeky shortcut to lessen the lap time. You will do substantial damage to the nose of your GT3 car. So Mercedes front engine leads Porsche very much rear engine, and the mid-engine Audi of Martin Rump and Car Collection Motorsport, the 500 car, remember, that is not homologated for this season's GT running, so it is in Class P4 instead, but that's only half a second behind as well, and that is mainly due to the talents of Martin Rump, who may well be new to this championship for racing, but is vastly experienced in other areas of single-seaters. If you go back far enough, he started in Formula Renault in 2011, did some North European Championship Formula Renault junior racing the following year, but then Audi R8 LMS Cup, that's where his connection with the Four Rings began in 2015, as Ralph Bone goes for the race lead and should get it this time. Yes, into turn 1. That was a move he rehearsed a lap ago, and a very good braking area there to be stable, under control, find the inside line and cements it at turn 2. So Charles Espenlaub rather caught napping at the start of lap 6.
I would say actually he saw that coming, because it was a lap before, and I think he kind of let it through, to be honest. It's early doors. We've mentioned already about how this is really a 2-hour sort of sprint race mentality, psychology process too. Don't risk everything now. And the Audi, actually, as you said that, young Martin, the 25-year-old at the wheel of that Audi, now started to give that CP Racing Mercedes a bit of grief as well. I'm not sure if the number 91 Porsche hasn't got a little bit of tyre damage actually from. I think it's the 112 car that was doing the fuel spillage. We were right. It is the 112 TCR car that's leaking the fuel.
No, it was an Audi RS3, so it's either the 101 or the 188.
Yeah, sorry,
112 is a Golf. I think I can tell an Audi from.
Yeah, sorry, I said about watching from the 101 car.
From the
watching
101.
from the 112.
Yes. 2 car 101 then. Well, that's the order they're in now. It's just a question of what order they were in at the time, because car 101, the red Camel Jordans.NL Audi of Rick Bloikers, has worked its way to the front of the TCE field to lead Milos Pavlovic in the Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power VW Golf car 112. Championship leaders in the TCE series, car number 1, down to 4th position now in the TCE part of the race, and out front from the TCX BMW M4 from Moonkopf Racing. But a fascinating dice for second and third currently. Charles Espenlaub trying to keep the elbows out. That Mercedes just cannot turn in at the same rate as the Audi, which is all over the curbs though, and they very nearly hit each other at turn 2. The Mercedes of CP Racing and the Martin Rump driven Car Collection Audi R8 LMS. So this new car running in Class P4, number 500, it's the Evo 2 R8, and now it will slip up the inside at turn 5 to get second position. And I just wonder whether Charles Espenlaub is quite happy with the set of tyres he's been given. No way of knowing how old they are, but you would imagine for the start of the race he was given stickered Hankook tyres. There's very rarely a limit on the amount of tyres you run, other than what your bank balance dictates. But if he's been catching the slight bits of the track just slightly off the racing line that are a bit greasy and a bit gravelly in places, then it means that you're out of that crucial and important slot, and therefore it's easy to slither wide in turns 1, 2, 5 later on in the lap, and then 12 and 13 as well. And Espenlaub looks at times to have a right handful of a Mercedes-AMG GT3. So Martin Rump picked his opportunity well and is up to second position now in that P4 class Audi. Fourth position, Jürgen Hering in the other Herbert Motorsport Porsche. The MP Racing Thomas Gossner-driven Mercedes is in 5th, ahead of Willy Motorsport by Ebby Motors Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. So that is entered into the 991 division. Not a lot of competition as far as Porsche Cup cars are concerned. So instead, Willy Motorsport having to pick their rivals in the GT3 part of the race. Really, I think there's going to be a good dice all race long between the Porsche Cup car and the GTX entered Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo from RD Sainz Racing Tool, and it is Italian driver Nicola Michelon who started the 720. But the TCE series cars really not very far from one another at all. Unfortunately, it looks like the BMW M4 won't be able to take the fight to the TCRs, at least on initial pace, because Eric von den Munkhoff is lapping about 3-4 seconds slower than the TCE leaders. So there's already a 25-second gap between Emil Heyerdahl in the 4th place TCR and the Munkhoff Racing BMW M4. But everybody else in the TCE series is well in the fight.
As normal, I would never have predicted, Johnny, that there's going to be a boring race, don't get me wrong, for a minute, but I did have that sort of thought that it is only 2 hours of the 12. It's an old split. We know we think it's because of timing, schedule, and whatever. And 10 hours tomorrow, they're starting racing at 8:30, which is unheard of, and obviously closing by 4:30 local time. So we suspect it's probably because of rules, noise, etc., environmental things at the track. But I did think that that element of having to have 2 hours today and 10 tomorrow would affect people's strategy and thinking and whatever. And as is so often the case when we do a commentary, Johnny, all the ideas we have, the teams and the drivers will go, nah, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to go, it's a gap. Well, is it a gap? No, it isn't. I'm going to make it a gap and round the outside. And it's totally different. And we're 15 minutes into a 12-hour race, and it's just, they're going mad. Somebody tell them to calm down.
Well, this is your theory that this is effectively a sprint race of the weekend to decide a grid for tomorrow, and
shows what I know.
They've obviously got the memo about that because
got the memo, screwed it up in the ball, lobbed it into the bin in the corner of the garage, and said, "No, we've got our own ideas. Thank you very much." Who's this Peter Snowden that commentates anyway? What does he know?
It's a good question.
It is. It's a valid one. Yeah, often been said before.
But the long game that normally you play for a 12-hour race has to go out the window at this stage because you are fighting for grid position for tomorrow morning effectively, and the danger is you start to take it a little too easy, look after the car, which ultimately you probably wish you'd done 11.5 hours into it tomorrow, but you can't afford to do that in this format. And I don't think we've ever had as short a first part of the race before. We've had 3 hours and 9 the following day, but 2 + 10 is a really interesting way of doing it, and not necessarily by design, purely because of the hours we can run tomorrow.
Yeah, we're in new territory, and we saw that how important it is, evidenced by the amount of pro drivers we've got starting the races.
So the Lamborghini Super Trofeo of RD Sainz, the RD Sainz racing team, car number 720, Nicola Michelon, heading towards the latter portion of the lap through the chicane rather, first of all. So this is 6 and 7, pulling through the gears, but then straight on the brakes again. And at times this track can be very frustrating because you really want to allow the car to do its stuff, but there's only 1 or 2 occasions around a lap where you can do that, and it's a point and squirt part of the circuit through 6, 7, 8 the left-hander, 9 the right-hander, 90 degrees, kink at 10, which is just a slight lift of the throttle, then into 11, more of a hard brake, and then down towards turn 12, a 90-degree right-hander, awkward left-hand hairpin at turn 13, and then the track climbs up the hill, not only on the straight between 13 and 14 as the pit lane entry peels off to Nicola's right, but then you're climbing through 14 as well, just a gentle incline, likewise across the start-finish straight, climbing underneath the advertising banner, and then the track levels off into the braking zone. You can hear the squeal from the Lamborghini's calipers and discs, and through turn 1, which is very easy to overshoot, particularly on that opening lap, but everybody just about managed to avoid that kink, the numberless and nameless kink just after turn 1. Now into turn 2. We were saying during our qualifying session that if you're going to have a moment into turn 2, better to just outbrake yourself and utilise the runoff rather than have a spin a little further around the corner, which is exactly what David Gosler did in his green number 58 Mercedes earlier on. Then the kinked through 3, longer run into 4, but it's an awkward entry then into the sequence of corners, almost a complex actually, at 4, 5, 6 and 7 as you go round the skid pan and the car test site on the inside of turn 5. Now we're already into Lappery, barely 20 minutes into this 2-hour portion of the race, and Porsche number 91 that is now leading the race with Ralph Bone at the wheel after a good overtake on Charles Espenlaub at turn 1. He is having to deal with traffic in the form of the 101 Audi of Rick Breukers. And although there was a concern about this Audi trailing some sort of fluid early on in the race, I think if it was overfill, all of that's been let loose, been burnt off, and the car no longer evidently spreading anything over the track. And thankfully, it was only just a small amount of fuel.
I think we have seen it with TCR cars before.
Yeah.
John, I'm not suggesting it's a design fault or whatever, but it's not uncommon. So I did say that not overfitting. We have seen occasionally cars that smoke a little bit on the first couple of laps, and that gets our attention because you obviously think, is it going to be an engine issue or is it a tyre rubbing or something? And it's just a little bit of a precaution, if you like, a sort of a safety net, if you like, of overfilling it with oil to make sure, because it's a long race, so I have enough in there. And I think just going back to some of the races earlier in the year, if my memory isn't playing tricks on me, I think we've seen a couple of TCR cars do that at the very beginning before, with just a bit too much fuel in there. Just there's the amount of, obviously they've been to the UK and got the cars full, so while they can now.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's where our fuel's gone. They're all out here at Hungary.
Fill every tank you can.
Exactly.
Is the name of the game. The 112, new livery, special livery for Autorama Motorsport. And I assume this is where they've sourced this Golf this weekend, unless it's a complete rewrap for a car that was white and red previously. But it might be the fact that they couldn't get both cars on site that they would normally run, so the 112 could well have been loaned in from another team. But it's a very nice look to the 112 car, the sister car to defending champions Emil Heyerdahl, who races this weekend with Konstantin Kletzer and Fabian Dance as well, along with Stolarczyk. But the 112 has a familiar-looking lineup with Jasmine Preissig, who did the 24 Hours of Barcelona a month ago, with Emil Heyerdahl, who currently drives, and that is the Tracy Crone Green with the backing from Green Hope. So that'll be another reason why it's been wrapped in those particular colours. Heading into turn 5, still well in touch with other members of the TCE Series field. So up ahead, Milos Pavlovic in the sister VW Golf. Pavlovic drives the 112 with Emil Heyerdahl behind, and the class is led by Rick Breukers in the 101 car. But this is impressive pace from Milos Pavlovic, who in the past has driven Lamborghinis in the main GT class, so lending his talents to something that is slower but certainly no less fun to drive. He is gold graded after all, the Serbian from Belgrade, 38 years old, and a former European Lamborghini Super Trofeo champion in the pro class. So capable really of manhandling any sort of machinery around this track. He is finding time to take part in this event, which will be his first outing this year in the 24/8 series, in amongst his Lamborghini European Super Trofeo commitments, and also GT Italia as well, where he's racing with both Easy Race and Benaldi Motorsport, whoever will employ him at any one time, I suppose, in the GTC category.
We're talking strategy of this 2 hours and the potential different philosophy that we think the teams have compared to the commentary team. two totally diverse things here. Unsurprising, they're out there doing it. We're just talking about it. But we mentioned contact at the very beginning between the Mercedes and the Porsche, and that turn 1. It was the Mercedes that came down the inside and clattered into the side of the number 91 Porsche. There is some fairly extensive damage, bodywork-wise, sill and whatever, on that Porsche. It is between the wheels, so it's on the bodywork, the sill, maybe the door a little bit, but equally you've got to think, well, that's going to last now. They've only got to get it to the end of this 2 hour race. They can presumably work on that overnight. I think we've got is that one of the Vortexes going slow? It is. Number 701 with Gilles Courtois at the wheel. And that's second in class and P11th overall. That's and stopping directly. So we may have our first issue of the race in terms of retirement. The 701 Vortex V8 pulling over at the side of the track. Now, obviously, some kind of issue there for Gilles Courtart. Has managed to pull it out of the way and get it onto the side of the track and switched off and going to do it. And that's at top of the hill, which is turn 4, I believe, isn't it?
Yes.
At the top of the hill, that big runoff area where you've got the left-hander blind brow over to the right.
Turn 4 is down at the complex area. Turn 3
I know.
is...
Okay, I know where I mean. I probably got the wrong number then.
Yeah, but you're right in that it's the top of the hill.
That's
so
a real case, Johnny, though. Listen to what I mean, not what I say.
Okay, fine.
You know the rules.
I'll probably pick you up as well on your comment about fixing the Porsche overnight, because you're not allowed to do that.
That's what I was trying to be. You're probably not allowed to do that, so exactly.
Because the cars at the end of this 2 hours go straight into Parc Ferme,
yeah.
effectively. So the only thing you can do is tomorrow, when you can clean the windscreen, you can adjust the door mirrors, you can change your driver. So it doesn't have to be the same driver in at the restart of the race tomorrow compared to the driver that ends this first portion. But what you can't do is fix any damage. You can't put more fuel or oil in. All those crucial things that you desperately probably want to do if you're Herbert Motorsport and are suffering, yes, damage on the sill of that car. And I noticed that as it turns right through turn 6. Car 101 is in very, very early. Now, were they anticipating perhaps a code 60? I don't think so, because this is barely half an hour into the race, so the car won't be needing fuel. This is a genuine issue for the 101 car, and is it related at all to the questions we were posing at the start of the event? Right side of the 91 car is certainly the sill that is damaged after the contact from the 58 Mercedes in the first corner. But the 91 Porsche is being put under stern pressure from Martin Rump, who's on the inside now of Ralph Bone. That would have only given him the outside line in the turn 14, but Rump is there again, right at the apex in this brand new Audi, the one that theoretically shouldn't be on a level playing field with the Porsche. But remember, we're talking about drivers of differing abilities as well, not necessarily experience, because Ralph Bone far more experienced than the guy who's chasing him. But remember that Estonian Martin Rump is a regular in the GT World Challenge Series, the SRO promoted competition, so therefore is generally a quicker driver than Ralph Bone. Ralph clearly has his own role to play in the team, but Car Collection have decided to put a quicker driver in for this opening stint. Is it going to pay off? We've got more drama on this lap at turn 12. We'll get to that in a second, but first of all, our first update from the pits comes from Lukas Gajewski.
Yes, and from Ivo Breukers. As you mentioned, his Audi just came into the pits with his son Rick, who just left again. Ivo, what was the reason for that quite early pit stop?
Quite simple. We anticipated on the code 60. We saw the car stopped outside of the corner, and we thought that might be code 60, and we gambled wrong. So, but at least we have new tires.
I think you changed the front tires, didn't you?
Yes, the front is most critical in this circuit. So yeah, now we can go to the end of the fuel.
You didn't take any fuel this time, did you?
No, we didn't. We hope for another code 60, of course, and we don't want to lose more time.
All right. As we speak, especially about fuel, we saw some liquids in the first few laps of the race. Is there still an ongoing issue with that?
No, it's the car is homologated like that, and sometimes there's this over fuel. Usually it happens before you start the race because you fuel completely up, and then you spill some fuel, but it's nothing serious.
All right, that's good to know. And is it your first time in the TCR Audi here?
Yeah, for me it is. Yes. Actually, we like it very much. We only have to cope with the lack of ABS, and especially if you are under pressure, it's not easy to drive without ABS if you're not used to it. But we're getting better at it, and we still a long way to go to get used to it.
Ivo, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Ivo Breukers chatting to Lukas Gajewski as our commentary box, the global commentary centre, is about to fall apart at the seams because Snowy and I are having a massive argument about where the Vortex left the road. I say turn 3, he says turn 4. The top of the hill was confusing me, but he's quite right that turn 4 is at the top of a hill compared to turn 3. So the incline goes up to the skid pan type area. It still looked like turn 3 to me where the Vortex was off, but someone on the collective will know. So you reckon it's where the Audi's turning left now And there's another orange car off the road. Is that still the Vortex that hasn't yet rejoined? I'm only able to see the roof of that car, but it looks vaguely
sure.
Vortex 1.0 shape.
It is, yes.
Yeah, okay. I was mainly doing that on colour because I don't think there's another
going again. It's moving
orange
again.
car.
More interestingly, and certainly better for the team, is Gilles Coulthard has got the 701 moving again, but it's now stopping. So I'm trying to find where he is actually on the circuit for us.
Turn 12 exit of, I'm going to say, the
so
right-hander.
He's moved on a long way round, hasn't he?
Yes. And that would rather back up your theory that it was 4.
We've got a yellow flag at turn 12 now, which will be because of the 701 Vortex there. And whatever it is, it seems to be intermittent on that car. It didn't, when it first pulled off, it pulled off onto the right-hand side of the track, wherever it was between turns 3 and 4. Let's just settle on that. So turn 3.5 on the track, shall we say?
You're being kind to me, I think.
Well, I'm always being kind to you, Johnny. It's part of what we do. It moved over to the right-hand side of the track and just seemed to slow down as if it was an electrical or something like that. There was no smoke, no debris, nothing like that. It just looked like it could have been mechanical, but to me, it struck me as potentially electrical, as in that Alt Control Delete Reset type thing.
Code 60, though.
Code 60, indeed. And he pulled it completely off out of the way originally.
You're bang on. It's turn 4. You get a point. How many weeks have you been waiting for?
How long have you been trying for that?
So that was turn 4, where the initial Vortex issue struck. It's worked its way around quite a substantial amount of the lap. Half of it? Yeah, about half of it, from 4 to 12. But this has eventually brought out the first Code 60 of the race. And only just over half an hour into this first portion, which could rather throw the cat amongst the pigeons regarding strategy, because you
100%,
think,
yeah, absolutely.
Let's plan our first 2 hours. This is very simple. If you're in a GT car, just one pit stop between start and the end of the race today. Now what do you do? Does this provide an opportunity for fuel?
There's a whole bunch of team managers and team strategists standing on the pit wall now going, oh, shucks. Just what we had planned out. It's now really... That Vortex has just changed it completely. What is really desperate for the Vortex is it's going to be recovered to the pits. Hence, we've got the Code 60, as we do in this series and other series like NLS and stuff, where cars get recovered and you get the chance. Because they've got 10 hours to race tomorrow, don't forget, still. So they can get them in. So that car won't be subject to Part Fermé rules yet, because it's still in the race. The race time is still running. But I still think... I'm going to be brave here and say it's something electrical, because it seems to be intermittent. Because it pulled off very safely, very calmly, very professionally, Gilles Coulthard at the wheel, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. That pulled it off to the right-hand side, seemed to get it going again, and moved it on from, we now know it was turn 4, got it around another 8 corners to turn 12 before it's finally gone. And we did just catch a quick glimpse when we saw some VT there a bit. It started, moved forward a few feet and stopped again. So there's obviously something that's... It ain't going to be fuel at this time of the day, this time of the race. Well, if it is, it's going to be hugely embarrassing. So we'll just move on from that one, shall we?
There's a very large hole somewhere in that Vortex if it's already out of fuel, yeah.
So it's been towed back to the pits now. This is the 7.1 Vortex that we're talking about. And I would not be at all surprised if that car is back out again. I'm going to say fairly soon. I hope so, anyway. One
of the recovery vehicle staff is in the boot lid of the recovering car. Almost, it reminded me of a helicopter winch man there, but he had a foot in the towing strop to make sure that it was taut to allow the Vortex to be towed into pit lane.
That's quite brave, using your foot, isn't it, to keep the tow rope taut between yourself, the tow vehicle, and the towed racing car. It's old school.
Quite a responsibility.
It's certainly dedicated.
Yeah, agreed. Now, Herbert doing what Herbert are well known for, which is to never pass up the opportunity to fuel a car. It's not necessarily going to be a long Code 60, this, because the vehicle that's caused it is already out of the way on the exit of turn 12. But nevertheless, in comes a Porsche, and they have to dodge around the right-hand side of the much slower Vortex, which is being towed in. And we've got probably 5 cars that have elected to come down pit road. And the problem is, how many pumps are there now in the separate fueling area that is being designated purely for that purpose? No teams at this end of the pit lane, so fueling is actually taking place in the pits just at the very end of it. First of all, though, the 91 car will stop off with the team for a new set of Hankook tyres. and then they will send it off again. So what actually was the priority, getting new rubber rather than putting fuel into it? I'm sure they won't neglect.
Well, you always fuel regardless.
Yeah.
You may not necessarily take on rubber as well.
Well, yeah, that's
Johnny,
the interesting bit, isn't it? That they've gone full rubber and fuel, but no driver change.
But think of strategy. We're half an hour in, effectively, 35 minutes in. Huberth, long game, always going to play the long game. You said never turn down the opportunity of a safety car and get it into the pits, which they've done. I noticed that we saw a little bit of footage there. Lucas, our pit lane man, was having a longing look at the M6 BMW going by, and I thought, I think he's hankering after one of those. Can you see Lucas in an M6 on the road? Do you think it's his kind of thing? Yeah, it's his style, isn't it? Yeah,
I would think so.
With the shaved head, but the new moustache he's got for Hungarian, gone very local, gone very native for this weekend.
I think he'd be happy with any of the GT car, or indeed any of the cars full stop in this particular race.
Yeah, join the queue, mate.
Might possibly want the Vortex on slightly better form, and it has found better form at times through the course of 2021. It's more unusual these days for that car to hit reliability problems this early on. It's had several race finishes in 2021, despite its past reputation of struggling to make the 3 or 4 hour mark in a 12-hour affair. So the 85 is back on the move. The 92 Herbert Motorsport car is currently in the fueling area, where you have to drop your speed to 20 kilometres per hour, as explained a little early on by Lucas. And I believe he's got an update now on the 91 Herbert Motorsport Porsche.
Just to confirm that you were exactly right, the 91 took tyres and fuel as well. However, no driver change. It's still Ralph Bone in there. And the 92 is doing it differently. Jürgen Herring out of the car, and I think I spotted Bobby Gonzalez going in. Now let me check, he's doing fuel as well. So both cars on the same strategy, fresh tyres, fuel of course. Just a driver change for the 92 then.
Interesting that they are choosing that moment this early on. Is their strategy there perhaps to just get every driver, if they can, a bit of action today, so that they are aware of the condition of the racetrack this early on in the race, and also, you know, just things like reference points where the sun is this later on in the day, because whoever they might throw at the car this time tomorrow will need to know or be familiar with their surroundings.
Indeed, interesting strategy from the two of them there. Yeah, long game as ever with Huberth. I think we're going to have code 60 finish. Yes, red, green flag, as we say that. Spot on. So green flag, back to full racing once again. Interesting strategy from Huberth Motorsport there. Both cars, 91, 92. Tyres, fuel, one with a driver change. Just a little bit of experience at the wheel there. Don't forget they've got the machine, as they call him, Daniel Harman, to go through both cars either, or they can just swap him around. When I say play the Joker, I don't mean he's a Joker. I'm always wary of saying that. It makes it sound like he's a Joker. He's not. It's that Joker in a card game, as it were. They've got that ace up your sleeve, for what a better way I wanted to put it. So you can never, ever, ever discount Huberth, and they've proved that in 5 races we have this season of Creventic, haven't we, so far? Is it 5?
Yeah, 5 so
and
far.
They've won 3 of them.
3 wins out of 5, yeah.
It's not a bad record, is it?
Very good. No, very good. And
as I said, I'd bet your house on them not winning.
Well, I think, you know, 91, 92, tricky to tell between the two of those which will take the victory, but I think both are massive, equal favourites before
I think
we
they get
going.
to a point where it's so close that sort of with half an hour to go in the race that they just sort of flip a coin in the garage and decide which one's going to win. Whose turn is it this weekend?
Or will they start to get up to Toyota-type antics that we've seen in the World Endurance Championship, switching them around, sort of 20 minutes apart? You know, let's try them with the 7 and the 8, and then try 8 ahead of 7. Maybe they'll do the same with the 91 and the 92. There's a very nearly contact there between the two teammates.
Cars, yes. 112 and number 1 car, the traditional white, red, and mostly white and red Autorama Golf with the car 112 ahead of it. This is the champion car sitting behind its teammate, as you say, scrolling under braking into turn 1, and this luminescent sort of marker sort of colour, highlighter colour on the on the 112 car. Lucas did touch on that, didn't it? That it's been sponsored and it's receiving money for every lap it completes. And perhaps Lucas at some point could give us a bit more detail of that over the race. We've got 10 hours tomorrow. That's going to be for you and Bruce, isn't it? I'm not expecting him to find out tonight. But the two Autorama cars, it's the one thing you never want to do is get involved in incidents with your teammates. And these two very, very nearly did. How they didn't contact one another into that turn one there, the pit lane exit, I'm not quite sure. I think that's largely down to the champion car, number one, just getting on the brakes out of it in the time. But it was pretty close there.
Well, it was Emil Heyerdahl who got very close indeed to Milos Pavlovic. And Pavlovic generally quicker than Heyerdahl, although not in this type of machinery. So there's some adjustment that needs to be taken into account for the Serbian driver who's in the 112 compared to Heyerdahl, who has been in this car all season. So more used to, I suppose, coming out of a code 60 where the tyre temperature drops and then it will take a while to build again. And certainly Heyerdahl, the Norwegian from Oslo, just 19 years old. We heard from him on the grid with Lukas Gajewski, looking very racy at the restart of the race. So a reminder that we don't have a safety car procedure in the 24/8 series. Instead, it's a format called Code 60, which is when the whole of the racetrack is restricted to 60 kilometres per hour. First adopted in the Dutch Supercar Challenge, and an idea that's kind of been weaved into Creventic racing since then. But what it should ensure is that if you've spent the first half an hour of the race building a 5-6 second lead, you should still have that coming out of the caution period, rather than if we ran safety car, they would be nose to tail again. There is an argument to say, well, that creates closer racing, a safety car period, but it does rather also create a fake scenario, because, you know, from the leader's perspective, you think, I've been working really hard to build this lead up from the start of the race, and all of a sudden it is wiped out through no fault of my own. So there are arguments both ways. Certainly a fairer race, I think, is to do it with a Code 60. The right-hand side of that Porsche looks no better the more chances I catch sight of it as the car turns right through turn 6. So that sill, the portion of bodywork that sits between the front and the rear wheel on the right-hand side, rather heavily attacked by the nose of Mercedes 58 at the start of the race, as Herbert Motorsports' Ralph Bone now through turn 12 and into the braking area for turn 13. Still very much with the 500 Audi for company. And these cars are now running in 3rd and 4th positions rather than earlier when Ralph Bone led the race. That is because we've had pit stoppers for, well, Charles Espenlaub came into the pits as well and probably only did fuel rather than tyres or a driver change. So he was able to come into the pits and go back out again pretty quickly compared to Ralph Bone, who we know did do tyres, and that's what's lost him ground. Thomas Gosner didn't come in at all, so that car will need to pit if it stays out for the full hour. It'll have to pit after about 60 minutes, but the green Mercedes number 58 is currently in 2nd place. So it's Peter Snowden and Johnny Palmer keeping you company on RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels, and our third voice for the whole weekend, Lukas Gajewski, who's looking after things in the pits.
With Jürgen Hering, who, as you said, climbed out of the 92 Herbert Porsche after what was a very, very exciting start stint for you, Jürgen.
Yeah, it was okay. We have a very good start. I was the leader after the first lap, but of course, then I know the other one behind me were faster. They are the fast drivers on it, and so I let them go, and I think I was 3rd or 4th. And I made my race. It was okay. It was good. Yeah. And we had some. I think if we had 1 minute before, my team told me that it's code 60, then I could come in, and we were. Then I think it would be better than now. But okay, that's code 60 always.
So it wasn't a clear decision to come in because of the code 60.
Yeah, it was a clear, but I was too far that I couldn't come in anymore. They told me after I just was in the curve and I couldn't turn into the pits.
And that's why you came a lap later than the 91 car.
Yes, yes. So I come later than the 91, and we lose a little bit, but okay. Perhaps next time we will win. We will see.
Was it planned to get you out of the car already?
No, it was not planned. It was because of the Colt 60. Now we couldn't, with Taki, we can now finish the race today, and we decide that he goes in.
I was checking the clock. It's 1 hour and 15 minutes still to go. Will you have to pit once again?
Normally we could go through, but it depends how we. How the disadvantage is, how we have to the leader, and then we decide if we come in and pit and refuel for tomorrow, for the tomorrow race. Otherwise, we had to come tomorrow very early.
Great stuff, Jürgen. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, interesting to get the perspective of the 92 car, because, of course, when a Code 60 is issued, you have to be in the right place to take advantage of it. And although the radio communication eventually arrived for Jürgen Hering to pit, he was already beyond the point of no return for that particular lap, so didn't go particularly well for the car that had started really well and obviously qualified with Marco Seefried on pole position. They've got some catching up to do. This motor racing lark does have a habit of taking one away with one hand and giving back with the other, so Jürgen Hering trying to put a brave face on it and hoping that the luck will balance out at some point tomorrow. But certainly not the ideal situation for car 92, after it looked like they were maybe in a better position than the sister car 91, that now is in second place. So Ralph Bone has got ahead of Thomas Gosner on the previous lap. Did that courtesy of a lap time that was 147.6 compared to Gosner, who is struggling to match that right now, 150.8 for the Italian in the Italian run, MP Racing Mercedes. But at the moment, we've certainly got, well, both Porsches in the GT3 field have the potential to be in the top three by the end of this. Charles Espenlaub in the CP Racing Mercedes looking like a strong contender, because their performance across the driving combination is very consistent indeed. Charlie Putman still to come, Joe Foster and Shane Lewis as well. You've got the car collection Audi, the Evo 2, which technically, as per the regulations, shouldn't win this race, but the way Martin Rump has started, you try telling him that.
Because nobody told Martin, the 25-year-old Estonian, who's obviously very happy to be back in that car in an Evo version, trusted with that car straight away. Back to the Vortex 701 that's in the pits. Of course, my prediction that it would be, hopefully a quick fix, and it was just thinking, of course, when I say that, that means that the exact opposite happens. So basically, whatever sort of predictions I make, to make the complete opposite betting odds on that. And they're sitting there with the 701 Vortex in the pit. So to the point, I bet Lucas could probably pop down to the garage and find out what's going on with it. But they're working away furiously on the mechanics, technicians on that car furiously. But the rear deck is off it, or certainly a lot of work going on that, and something inside the cockpit. So I'm guessing, just second guessing, that inside the cockpits where probably quite a lot of the ECUs and brains and bits and electronics are kept out of the way of the heat of the engine bay. So I'm just wondering if it is that way, but we will see. Perhaps Lucas at some point could find us our man down there in the pits, Lucas Gajewski, go a little wander down to the pit lane and find out what's going on with it. 701 Vortex. They might be quite busy though.
Squirming and sliding its way eventually past the 58 car has gone Martin Rump. He tried it at turn 12, a couple of corners before the eventual overtake. Very nearly ran into the back of Thomas Gosner, who at the time was in third position in the MP Racing Mercedes. But now that P4 entered Audi R8 LMS Evo 2 has got past and up to third position with only 5 seconds to try and find now on Ralph Bone. This is a fascinating opening exchange then. We are nearly 50 minutes into the 12 hours of Hungary for 2021, and lots of cars that are evenly matched, which is always promising ahead of so much running tomorrow. Sunset then, 6:20 tonight. We're due to be racing a further 10 minutes after that, and it certainly, by the look of the length of the shadows and the quality of the light, which looks brilliant actually, but you can sense that we're nearing sunset. We're just an hour away from it now at 5:20.
It has that golden autumnal hue to it, does it not?
That's expertly put. As now the inside of the BMW M6 was the 91 Porsche. That's not for position because the BMW, the JR Motorsport run M6 of Ted van Vliet was actually being lapped there.
So not for position, kind of for fun.
Well, in effect, yes, but also Ralph Bone doesn't want to lose ground on Charles Espenlaub, so not for fun in that respect, because he's smelling the race lead, less than a second away now from the American for CP Racing.
10 minutes off the end of the first hour, which will put us at halfway point, and that is halfway point of the 2-hour segment of the first part of this 10-hour race. To reiterate again, it is a 12-hour race over the weekend, but it's 2 hours this afternoon, which we're looking at now and calling, and then we've got 10 hours of this tomorrow.
We have.
But it is a fascinating strategy, Johnny.
Espenlaub wide to give the lead back to Ralph Bone. He went far too deep into turn 5, and Bone was there to pounce. So into the chicane at 6 and 7, it is a Porsche back to the sharp end. You can't take your eyes off this one as we go straight to Lucas. Before we go to Lucas, let's just remind you, sorry about to chat across you, but I've just got to re-describe the overtake, which came out of nothing, really. So Porsche at the inside to the racing line, where Charles Espenlaub absolutely was not. Let's go to Lucas Gajewski.
Thank you very much, Johnny. I'm holding in my hands the reason why the Vortex car isn't running anymore. I'm afraid I'm running out of English now, but this is obviously a belt, and because this is hardly damaged, the car has run out of electricity, and that's why it's in the pits. As you can see, all the mechanics are working very, very hard to get it fixed again. And it's always a tragic sight, because especially in the 24H series, we like these cars. You know, we have so many GT3 cars, so many TCR cars all around the world, but these exotic cars are really what make the championship so interesting. And I'm always amazed. I mean, this car has a massive GM V8 engine, 6.3 liters, I think. And even though it looks quite large and quite big, it's actually less than a ton. Now here's part of the bodywork, and as you can see, it's very easy to actually lift it, so I might step on it to stop it from floating away here in the pit lane. I'm going to hand this back, don't think they need it anymore, but still do. And then let's hope the car is soon back on track.
There in the pits with the update on the Vortex, and so we were right in one sense. It's kind of mechanical that's caused an electrical thing. It's one cause and effect, isn't it? It's a drive belt that's sheared there, but obviously a little bit more to it than just that. It's what else is done. So it's run out of electricity. It's got nothing to power all the systems on the car. Just before we went to Lucas in the pits there, Johnny, you were talking about the CP Racing Mercedes losing its position and race lead to the Herbert Motorsport Porsche. And you said it just ran deep and ran a bit wide. You had questioned quite early on in this statement, we're only not even an hour into this race, what set of tyres was on that Mercedes. It didn't look to be as balanced as we'd normally expect that CP Racing Mercedes to be. And
no.
I just wondered there if it just caught himself out, and it did appear to just understeer. And you say it didn't take a second for Herbert the driven car to say thank you very much, I'll have that. But I'm just wondering, as you said, Johnny, did you spot something, a really good call there earlier with that CP Racing Mercedes perhaps not having the most balanced or new or fresh or sticky, however you want to put, set of tyres on that car?
If that is the case, it's peculiar, because you technically shouldn't have a limit on the Hankook rubber available to you, and for this opening stint.
But it depends what set they've put on it to start the race. So not what's available, it's what they've put on it to choose to start the race. Its last lap was 48 compared to the Herbert car of 47. So it's not got a lack of pace, because most of the cars there are sort of in the 47s, 50s.
But there's no obligation to use tyres that you've used in qualifying, for instance, because there is no tyre limit. So you just keep going to Hankook and buying fresh rubber.
Oh, that is music to a driver's ears. There
you would have
is
thought so.
Tyre limit.
I know.
Oh,
but that's...
We need your kind of sponsor. I like your view on racing.
As long as you've got the cash to give to Hankook. I think all the tyres are built in Germany.
Those of you listening in the UK, Johnny, just write down the first 6 numbers that come to your head, because it's National Lottery Night. Never mind Strictly Come Dancing, all that rubbish. national lottery right. Write down the first 6 numbers that come into your head. We'll run a race team. You can manage it.
All right.
We might even let Joe Bradley in there.
I just
somewhere.
read the regulations. It's nothing to do with luck.
I think you're underselling yourself, sir.
We had Lucas Gajewski having got to the innards of the Vortex
Got
V8.
his hands dirty, literally
is now,
in the pit lane.
Yes, precisely. And bearing in mind that coronavirus is still everywhere, so we're told, always wash your hands. And that's exactly what Lucas is doing, but I think more because of grease and oil underneath the fingernails. And
outside of his comfort zone.
Maybe so. But he has that split drive belt, or did have in his hands, which he will discard of in a moment or two. Great side-by-side action a moment or two ago between the JR Motorsport BMW and the Mercedes. Again, not actually for position, because Thomas Gosner has completed 27 laps, as opposed to Ted Van Vliet, who has 26 laps to his name. But the Mercedes nevertheless had to find a way by the M6 GT3 and did so underneath the Beamer at turn 1. And we've had just over 55 minutes of this 2-hour first segment of the 12 Hours of Hungary. But once more, the Charles Espenlaub Mercedes, that of course didn't change tyres at its pit stop, whereas the Porsche did. So I think that will be one of the differences why Ralph Bone could get by with relative ease at turn 5 into the race lead. Doesn't quite explain why the Mercedes was so slip-slidey in the early phase of the race, though.
I think we could be chasing a problem that's possibly not there.
Yeah.
Can't just quite simply be a mistake.
Wouldn't be a first for me.
As you said, well, we're not in the car, we're not there, we're not watching, we're trying to call it, and we're speculating or specutainment. But it's that unlimited tyres. Why wouldn't you take on a set of tyres when you could? The driver change. They must have chosen not to for a reason, is my point.
You gain time, certainly. It's a quicker pit stop, and put them in a slightly better position.
60 anyway, so it's kind of
true.
It's a little bit nullified, isn't it?
To an extent, yes. But I suppose they didn't know how long the Code 60 was going to last for. They knew it was going to be quick because the Vortex was virtually recovered when they came in. So maybe to save, a purple stop, a Code 60 stop bleeding into the green flag period once it becomes green again, maybe they just want to do a quick in and out, don't worry about tyres, get the fuel in. At the moment, you have to say the tyres were the better option, because that's proving Ralph Bone's car with the fresh rubber is proving to be quicker. Last time around setting a 147.8, and Charles Espenlaub's lap 2 seconds off that. And Charles, very honest guy when he's out of the car. We've seen, rarely does he make a mistake, but he certainly made a slight error at Barcelona, and he was the first to admit to that. Remember when he got in, he braked in front of a TCR car in Barcelona. The TCR car couldn't quite stop, and that put the TCR car into the gravel.
Code 60, it was only about lap 1 or 2, wasn't it?
It was early in the race, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But Espenlaub held his hands up to Nick Damon in Spain, and he may well admit to Lucas that they've made an error during the pit stop, the first pit stop. We'll wait and see, because we're not quite at the end of this phase of the stint, and it might yet come good for CP Racing.
Well, Herbert Motorsport currently leading 29 laps completed, 5.4 seconds in the lead from the car I've just been talking about, the number 85 Charles Espenlaub driven CP Racing Mercedes. That in turn has the young charger, 25-year-old Estonian Martin Rump on board the Car Collection Motorsport R8 Evo 2 Audi, and of course that is from the SP4 class. As in, it's not actually homologated, what we call SBX into NLS and other areas. So it's not a full. It is a GT3 car, but it's not yet been homologated. It's a 2022 car, so it hasn't had its balance of performance applied yet. But Martin Rump, nobody's told him that. 0.9 of a second it was across the line. It's a lot less than that now. They've just been caught up behind a couple of the TCR cars. That battle as well, by the way, the two Autorama Golfs. Nobody's telling those two that they're driving for the same team. I don't know if it's because of the change of colour of one of those cars, because normally they're identical, so you've got your livery, you get used to it, you get used to your teammate. Maybe it's that sort of highlighted thing. And a change for second place. Martin Rump does indeed take the Audi down the inside, and Charles Espenlaub says, no, thank you very much, I'll take it back again. Almost side by side coming out of turn 1. I thought there was going to be contact there. Martin Rump takes the inside, which is a left-hander for turn 2. I thought the Mercedes was going to little look around the outside, but there was a definite change of position there, which I thought was going to reverse again really quite quickly, but hasn't. So the CP Racing Mercedes cedes its position to Martin Rump in the Evo 2 Audi, who immediately pulls out 4 or 5 car lengths.
It's very good on the brakes, this Audi, and also pretty good down the straights as well. And again, Espen Laub not able to initially defend into turn 1, but he realised the outside-inside trick might work on the exit. Problem is the Audi was so good out wide, leaving turn 1, still on the track, so didn't cross the white line, at least not with all 4 tyres and wheels. But yeah, couldn't get the drive, the Mercedes with the front engine, rear-wheel drive, obviously. And needed to really stay on the outside line of turn 2 if possible to then get the inside line for turn 3, but had already lost the place, and Martin Rump back into second position. Let's get back to Lucas, who's in the pits.
This time I'm not in the pits, but I'm actually overlooking the pits. Well, not only the pits, but effectively Hungary. Over there you can see the sun going down. When you are down in the pits, you can't see it anymore. So down there it's all in the shades. Picking up what you mentioned earlier, I think we will actually run, wouldn't want to say into the darkness, but it will be quite dark by the end of this 2-hour encounter. And I need to show you something, because over here you have a lovely overview of that circuit here in Hungary. There is corner, what was it, 3.5 over there, Snowy? Somewhere over there you can see the cars going around with a lovely water park in the backdrop. Over there the cars coming back towards the start-finish area. It really is a lovely place. Creventic hasn't been here for 7 years, and I think everybody who is here really enjoys being back.
Yeah, you can certainly tell why as well. It's a real fabulous motorsport facility, because there's obviously a karting race or some karting action going on in the infield. There's the skid pan and car test centre, which was a hive of activity during the interval between qualifying and the race. So, you know, wherever you look, it's not just the 12 hours that's taking place here, but car action left, right and centre. Brilliant to be back in Hungary, Snowy.
Absolutely, and what was really interesting there, we've got just an hour to go now, Johnny, of this first part race. So we've actually got 11 hours of this race to go. We're looking at this thinking, oh, we're halfway. Actually, we're halfway on tonight's stint. There's still 11 hours of this race to go for the rest of the team, so you've got to be mindful of that. And it's probably quite a valid point, is to not to get drawn into it's only a 2-hour race. It's not. It's 2 hours of a 12-hour race today with a gap overnight. But as you said quite rightly earlier on, Johnny, we can't do anything to the cars. They're in parc fermé. They can't do much in between. So it's not. It is one race. What was interesting from Lucas's little quick report there was about how the sunlight now behind the grandstand and the trees. So the pit lane is now not in darkness. There's no more sunlight in it. But 2 completely opposing light conditions on opposite sides of the track. One side was that beautiful golden autumnal shade we mentioned a little bit earlier, whereas other parts of it are now. They're not dark, but they're not lit anymore, if you see what I mean. And that's only going to get worse in the next hour. We've established already that sunset in Hungary is at 18:21 local time.
Yep.
So that's what we're talking 50 minutes away. So we're going to run the last 10 minutes of this. Lucas was hesitant on saying as to whether it would go into the darkness or not. I think it could well do. But more importantly, this last hour, we've got 57 minutes left on the clock as I look now. It's the big change now is going to be the light.
Yes.
And that's going to catch people out, different categories of cars, different speed differentials. We've got these TCR cars, we've got our Buda cars and our pest cars, as we call them. But you've got your 2 different categories. And this light is going to be really quite interesting on this final 57 minutes.
We're going to be in headlight territory, no doubt. You know, we all love that. The amount of overnight races that we've covered here on the Radio Show Limited network of channels through the years. And although this isn't a straight through 12 hours, you know, there's an element of darkness running, albeit for the final 10 to 15 minutes, as they're the 210 car just had to get out of the throttle. Eric Munkoff driving the Munkoff Racing entered BMW M4 GTR. That was because Eric saw the 58 Mercedes from MP Racing getting rather close in the door mirrors on the run into turn 6, and allowed that Mercedes, which is running in 4th position in the GT series, to get through. There's an interesting message on the screen a moment or 2 ago concerning the 210 that the team manager needed to confirm to race control the receipt of an 8-second time penalty which has been issued but not yet served, and that was for exceeding the speed limit during the Code 60 into... concerning Article 41. I thought it was referring to exactly where on the track, but actually not the case, but it needs to come in for that 8-second time penalty.
I thought it was rather diplomatically worded. Car 210, do not forget to confirm the receipt of the penalty.
Yes.
If ever there was a polite way of saying, yeah, excuse me, have a look. Yeah,
Pay attention.
You know what to do, exactly. Pay attention to the back of the glass there.
Exactly right. Yeah, well, the message has been sent
Which
by
none
race
of us
control.
ever did.
Certainly not. I was normally being distracted by people like you.
Hashtag blame Snowy.
7:20 Lamborghini Super Trofeo heading into turn number 1 at the start of the lap. 55 minutes still to go for Nicolo Michelon then, and the RD Signs Racing team, a welcome addition to the entry this weekend in Hungary. I wonder how many teams had confirmed for this event, thinking it would be being held at Enna on Sicily, around that fabulous circuit, and the second edition of the Coppa Italia, Coppa Florio rather. Unfortunately, that event not able to take place, but we're massively grateful to the Hungaroring for allowing us to come to this event at relatively late notice for the 6th race of the season, and providing this weekend for a 12-hour race, and the unusual mixture of a little bit of it on Saturday night, but most of it 10 hours worth tomorrow. And from a logistical point of view, you sense that wasn't necessarily easy from a team's perspective to switch their travel arrangements to a very different area of Europe. So snaking its way through this tight and technical section, which is effectively the whole of the middle sector of the lap, the Lamborghini driven by Italian driver Michelon, and 8 and 9 now successfully negotiated. In fact, he's much further around the lap, having just exited turn 12, where the vortex sort of broke down. We required outside assistance anyway to return to the pit lane. Lambo on the inside, but runs a little too deep into turn 14, so that wasn't the ideal line for Nicolas. But he's tidied his approach, or rather exit out of that corner up again, and with the sun right in his face as they cross the line, he and the Munkoff Racing BMW, he has clear road in front once again. So in the front of the GTX category, and I'd say that Lamborghini, with other GTX competition very slim on the ground, possibly focusing in on the 991 Porsche of Willy Motorsports as its nearest competition. They are only 5 seconds apart.
I'll talk about up-to-date or local intel for us, Johnny. Don't forget on the Twitter feed you can tweet to the studio at RSL_studio, and very kindly Ian McCarthy has done exactly that, confirming that I live in Hungary, brackets not at the circuit sadly, and can confirm it will be quite dark indeed come 18:30 hours, exclamation mark, definitely headlight territory.
Very good.
So live on the ground there in Hungary, so thank you very much, and say all tweets headed to at RSL_studio.
Thank you, Ian, and hopefully we've got your services tomorrow as well for yet more local knowledge. Much of which I'm sure the teams in certain areas are limited, because you need to have been running in the Creventic 24H series since 2013 to have ever run at this track before. Herbert Motorsport would have had one of the former winners as part of their ranks, because we detailed at the start of the day that Tim Muller was due to be in the number 92 car, and Marco Seyfried explaining that for outside reasons Tim couldn't be at the event, so instead Daniel Alleman has been brought in from the other car to be actually in both the 91 and the 92.
Super sub.
But interestingly, the last time we ran here in 2014, Tim Muller was a winner with Lance David Arnold and Valentin Pierberg in an SPS Automotive Performance Mercedes. Now that was probably an SLS Merc, which took victory after 12 hours and after 345 laps, winning it by only 36 seconds, which after 12 hours was quite some achievement. And winning from another Mercedes, the Hoffa racing car, which had Michael Kroll, Roland Eggerman, Kenneth Heyer and Christian Frankenhat. Remember that lineup in the number 1 Mercedes 7 years ago. So it's a bit of a shame, well, a real shame that Tim Muller can't be part of that 92 car, not least because he knows how to win this race. But otherwise, a lot of the teams that took part in this event in 2014 just simply aren't taking part in Creventic racing these days. So there are a number of teams and drivers that are getting acclimatised for the first time about the unique nature of this track.
Yeah, it's a very different set of scenarios there for you because, as you say, Johnny, you get used to a series, you go to certain circuits, you have data, and we've mentioned this time and time again, have we not? That you go out onto the circuit and you might lose 2 or 3 laps. Let's just say, not on one of the leading cars, but one of a car, as an example, may lose 2 or 3 laps due to a mechanical problem. What's the point in going out again? You're out of the running. Well, it's data collection. It's information. It's there for next time, and they build it all up. It's a knowledge base, how the car operates in these conditions on this tyre, and use it basically as a glorified test session. There's nothing quite like running it in a race. In fact, we saw it in the UK only last weekend with the first. Was it a hybrid run car that was in the touring cars? Andrew Jordan, former touring car driver, ran the car out, and they said they'd done all sorts of test sessions on whatever the car, but there was nothing like putting it into a race and seeing how it dealt with other things. And that's why we keep going. But you come here and you just say they were planning to go to Enna, and you haven't been to Hungary. Okay, so the teams that have been here before have immediately got a march on us, but we haven't. So, you know, it's just more information, more background. I think we've got Lucas ready for us in the pits, have we not, Johnny?
That's right, guys. I'm with Nicola Michelon, who just got out of the RD Science Lamborghini that was brought back to the pits. And Nicola, we can see you. That must have been quite a tough stint for you out there.
Pardon?
That must have been quite a tough stint for you.
Yeah, it has been tough. The start was a little bit tough because the Lamborghini is faster than the GT3, but if you overtake them, then you create a mess. So I had to stay behind, and Porsche overtook me on the left on the first corner, and I got into traffic. A lot of overtaking of GTE class, of TCE class and TCR, and then the fast GT3 came back and pretending space, obviously. So plenty of race.
So when people say it should be easy to overtake because it's only 16 cars out here, that's not true.
Yeah, all 16 fast cars. If there were 16 slow cars, then it would be easy to overtake.
I mean, that's an interesting point about racing in the 24H series, isn't it? Because you're the only Super Trofeo spec Lamborghini in this field, so you never really have a proper opposition out there on the circuit.
Yeah, you're mostly competing with yourself, basically, and I think it's all what 24-hour racing is about. It's okay, you can be faster or slower. At the end of the day, it's a 12-hour race, or 24, it depends, and it's more about how you get from yourself and the mistakes you don't do than actually how much fast you can be on a single lap.
What's your target then for the end of the race by tomorrow evening?
I think realistically we can end in between P7 or P8. If you are a little bit lucky, maybe P5 or P6. It depends also by what others are going to do, if they're going to make mistakes. For sure, our target is not to make mistake and finish first of our category, which is pretty easy.
All the best for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
So out goes the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, which it looks very hazy over towards turn 1. Visibility is going to become an issue before it goes fully dark, facing that area of the circuit, looking slightly better as the car loops back again. But yeah, the view through the screen doesn't look particularly crystal clear. Now, whether that is an effect from the camera rather than through human eye, it might be a lot better than that, as the blue flags are waving to the Munkhoff Racing BMW, and that is simply to warn driver Erik von den Munkhoff that Aldrius Butkevicius is trying to get through in the RD Signs Racing Lamborghini Huracan.
Because that's just what you want on the Hungaroring, and a GT3 Lamborghini is a dirty windscreen when you can't see it going and the light's fading. It's going to twilight. Just another layer of, I thought you were a driver. What is it our colleague Nick David always says? It's your job.
Yeah, exactly. And this is all part and parcel of it. But there is definitely a hazy atmosphere now. And when cars...
You don't mean in the commentary box, do you? You mean
no,
on track.
I do mean on track, but when cars go close to the curb and sometimes over it, they're kicking up quite a bit of dust, which seems to then just be sitting in the air, not helping visibility. But the golden shaft of light over towards turn 10, 9 and 10. Snowy's mildly entertained by the word shaft, I think. Just giggling away in the corner. Can't think why. As now in and out of turn 1 goes the number 500 Audi of Martin Rump, with in its wheel tracks the 955 Fabrizio Broggi Villi Motorsport by Ebby Motorsport Porsche.
For the avoidance of doubt, the amusement was we went back to the race we did with Nick when we did the Barcelona when he was in the pits with us.
Yeah.
And we had the 70s reference program. And I was thinking shaft, the 1970s American program. I'm thinking, oh, we're going back to that. And I thought, have I missed a memo? And you've got the first 70s reference in there that I've missed. I thought you got one ahead of me again, not showing me the same rules, you see.
I couldn't possibly comment. Now, there's a little bit of smoke coming from the brakes on the front of the BMW M6. That's nothing to worry about, though, Peter.
No, not at all. No, it's nothing.
They're going to check it. Well, they're checking something. Maybe they're just checking tyre pressures, actually.
No, disc temperature. Just putting the gun through, doing the radar, checking the disc temperatures.
Yeah.
The only danger of that is you see them trying to move it on a little bit while they're doing the driver change. Move that on is localised heat spot. You do get a heat soak in the calipers. Obviously, it dissipates at a different rate. And if you don't keep it, if you keep it in the same place, it can put a warp into the disc really quite quickly.
Okay. So you just move the car, you'll
just
rotate the wheel.
So the disc's in a different place to the caliper, and just let it heat, let it dissipate differently.
Evenly distributing your heat. It's like toasting some bread, really, and making sure that it's evenly done on both sides.
The same principle, yes.
It's a loose analogy, but I'll go with it.
It's close enough. Works for me.
9:55.
I'm only a driver. What do I know?
Well,
former.
You said that. The driver said that, people, not me.
I know my place.
9:55 back across the line. The Villi Motorsport by Ebby Motors Porsche 911 in the 991 class. And as I say, it's really a fight for 991 versus GTX honours. But having said that, of course, the GTX second place car of Gilles Courtois has now been in the pits for nearly 45 minutes, but class leader in GTX has also recently been in for a pit stop, so that means the Lamborghini's dropped further down the order and the pendulum swings in the direction of Villi Motorsport, but I still think they're going to be relatively even paced through the course of the race. The Porsche can generally go further into its fuel window than the GT3s, and a Porsche Cup car is very fast down the straights with much less aero. There's a bit of damage on the front right of that 955, I've just noticed. Some of the front splitter protruding.
Yeah, I think it's some trim from the right-hand side of, you say, from the splitter there, Johnny. This is the 955 car, isn't it?
Yes.
But it's almost like it's. I don't think there's any contact caused. I think it's almost like it's just come loose or something, or maybe just run over a bit of curb and just flattened it off a little bit. A little bit of carbon trim that's just effectively riveted onto the front of the splitter there. It's just come loose. I wouldn't even call it an end plane as such.
And you won't be able to feel the difference, I'm sure, at the wheel of the car.
Put it this way, if you can feel the difference, that he should be doing something else. Should be a surgeon. Feel the difference with that amount.
Yeah, because it's minimal variation. Fabrizio Broggi far more focused on the bigger jobs at hand, which I always love cars coming out of turn 13 here at the Hungaroring, because you can use the pit lane entry as sort of your exit route from 13. It's a little bit like in reverse at Donington Park. As you go into Redgate, you use a bit of the pit lane exit to shallow out the corner.
Every time, just jink over to the left and just gain yourself a bit of a different radius in. Absolutely.
It's not track limits, is it? Because the white line's even further across than that. So
still tarmac. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's legit.
And a dotted white line too. So you can't be done for going too wide. And every bit of the racetrack should be available to you.
Just hoping on the basis at that point they haven't released somebody from the pits at the same time.
That's the danger at Donington, isn't it?
Everyone's come out and not go across the blend line, and all of a sudden you've got a X-size car. Oh, hang on.
Exactly, yeah. So, yes, it's something that you've got to judge in the moment. But certainly that's what the 955 did of Fabrizio Broggi, experienced driver for the Romanian outfit, Villi Motorsports, but Italian driver. As down towards turn 1, 41 minutes left on the clock for the 85 Charles Espenlaub driven Mercedes. He's done every single bit of driving so far, and the car stopped. Well, he's an hour and 17 into his stint. I haven't got a column, of course, for when the car last pitted and therefore how much fuel it's potentially got on board, but it pitted during the code 60, didn't it? And the code 60 came to an end at 7 minutes past 5, so 37 minutes into the race, and therefore if these cars can do an hour, still good for about another 20 minutes, I would reckon, for that Mercedes number 85. It should need a fuel stop before the end, though. And there are other cars that didn't stop during the code 60. For instance, the 58 MP Racing Mercedes, which will be, well, I wonder how that car has carried on for such a distance without the need for fuel. Because, well, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes now. That is good going for the 58. I suppose it's code 60 has taken a little bit of the fuel, the maximum fuel consumption away. And Thomas Gosner is not the quickest GT driver out there. But nevertheless...
All valid factors, but have we missed a stop for that car?
No, well, not according to my screen.
I mean, I'm not doubting you for a minute, Johnny, but it's piqued my interest when you go, really? How long's it gone? I appreciate the fact if you all just said all that up and accumulatively you may well be, you usually are right, but you may well be 100% right, but it just seemed quite a long run.
Yeah, it definitely didn't stop in the code 60 because I made quite a note of that fact during the 7 or 8 minute or so code 60, but since then hasn't had the need for fuel. Now obviously 7 odd minutes running at 60 kph, so sort of 1/3 of the speed, has gained him back some fuel consumption, and as I say, rather driving with the slippers on perhaps to try and get a little bit of mileage eked out of the tank, but round they will go again, the 58 car, and I'm sure MP Racing, the team boss there, will be communicating with Thomas as to when he needs to come in, but you have to think in the next 5 minutes or so that car will be requiring a drink of fuel. BMW's side by side into turn number 2 as the ST Racing GT Series entry overtakes and indeed laps the Erik van der Munkhoff M4, as we can get another update from Lucas.
I was just checking the BOP sheet for this race, and the Mercedes AMG car does have the largest fuel tank with 105 liters. Guys, can you check how often the BMW, the JR Motorsport car, has been in the pits? Because that has the same fuel tank size at 105 liters. And they came in 1 or 2 laps ago.
Actually been in twice, Lucas, the JR Motorsport M6, yeah.
Right, then nothing of what I just said does make any sense, but it was a try.
No, it's a good theory.
Welcome to my world, Lucas.
And of course, the start of the race is potentially the only time in the whole event where a car can start with the maximum amount of fuel in the tank, because it might be that you just never get to that point. Because remember, even under green flag conditions, the maximum amount of fuel that you can put into your car isn't necessarily the amount the tank will hold. So this, no doubt, will be the longest stint for the 58 car. I'm just mightily impressed that we're not a million miles away from doing an hour and a half on a single tank now for a thirsty car. I mean, this is a 6.2 litre V8 that is in the front of the Mercedes. But Thomas Gosner generally lapping in the 150, 151. He's just done a 152. Although the car has done a 148. We've only had, obviously, the one driver at the wheel because no pit stop yet to change drivers. So in the early phase of the race, he was able to lap close to those around him. But since then, it's just dropped away, and he's now 4 seconds off his best. But it might come good as far as an approach to this first part of the race is concerned. A stop in the penalty box, albeit briefly, for the Munkhoff Racing BMW M4 GT4. Erik van der Munkhoff then able to serve that penalty as part of his normal stop. There aren't many other championships around the world where you can do that. But again, the organisers of this championship giving drivers the benefit of the doubt, saying you owe us a bit of time because of an advantage you might have gained through a Code 60 infringement. And actually that was a Code 60 infringement, wasn't it, for the 210? Because this is the car that was asked to recognise that they'd seen the penalty in the first place. And that now, for car 210, is labelled as served. So that was the 8 seconds being soaked up on the stopwatch, and the car now can continue with a clean record.
We were talking a few minutes ago, Johnny, about the, I did like a bit of technical update for you, like the 955 Porsche, which is the Fabrizio Proghi Vili Motorsport by Ebby Motors 911 GT3 Cup car. And that little bit of a, what looked like a splitter or damage or whatever. I've been looking at the front of that car. I've got a little still of it from being on the track, and it's anti-dive planes all in place there. It's a splitter. It doesn't have an end plate. It looks like a piece of carbon sticking out of the side. Now, if you go back to our Barcelona round where we had the CP Racing Ginetta that picked up a sausage curve, remember, and went out through the rear wing, I think it's something different. And I'm just wondering, so on that front right, it's almost like it's an inner wheel arch liner or something that's come a bit adrift and got itself turned round down to the front, because there appears to be a gap a little bit above there, and it's you can see it if we get a chance. It's sticking out, but there's the bodywork on the driver's side, on the right-hand side of the car there, doesn't match that on the left. I just wonder if a little bit has come adrift of its own accord there, and I think there's something missing from the front of that. It's rotated round and sticking out the side. What will happen, almost guarantee, is it comes into the pit. As it comes into the pits right now, perfectly on cue. I did not script that, but how good is that? I'm sure Lucas will be down there for us to get an eye on this at 955 Ebby Motors Porsche that comes in. But there's something sticking out on the front right-hand side of that car, and I think that'll be whipped off by a technician straight away. But I think it's part of its own car, if you see what I mean. So it needs to come off it.
Well, thank you.
Of course, having explained all that now, it'll be nothing of the sort.
Thank you to @Lanzarote Camel, who is the master of the screenshot, for identifying that. Still, I'm not quite sure where it's come from.
It's in its front wheel arch.
Inner wheel arch, you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's anti-dive planes and bits are there, unless it's one of those, unless it's a dive plane that's come up. But it's something, I think it's part of its own car. It's kind of tripping up over itself. Its shoelaces are undone effectively.
yeah, and there's a bit of trim just on the front of the wheel arch, where the wheel arch becomes the front splitter, that is missing as well, and perhaps a replacement part now being offered up, or just a bit of tape, actually.
Oh, duct tape.
Yes, about time too.
An hour and a half in and we've got duct tape. Now we're rocking. Now it's an endurance race, Johnny.
Is there some space for some cable tie action as well? So Lucas is holding the stray bit of bodywork. What do you think it is?
Souvenir box.
What do you think it is, Lucas? Oh, sorry. I'm now asking you to turn your microphone on and hold the bodywork. You can do that. There are broken bits of attachments.
Well, they're just brackets that have been holding it on. It's I think it's part of the inner wheel arch line at front right there.
Okay.
A little bit. Maybe might be an anti-dive plane, but they'd normally be more carbon.
Yes. Lucas still desperately trying to get the radio microphone cranked up. Maybe some new batteries required already.
New batteries, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're barely 90 minutes in, so
it's like the Vortex had run out of electricity.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, spent too long in the Vortex garage, so his microphone's died.
A drive belt has snapped in Lucas's microphone. Audrius Butkavicius and the RD Science racing team, the Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo, leading the GTX category. Remember, it is fighting effectively the Vortex, so easily winning the class battle right now because of all the bad luck for the Vortex that came early on. And that car has been sitting in the garage now for best part of an hour, in actual fact. They may have to take the 10-lap penalty overnight, which is what you get if you work on the car outside of Parc Fermé rules. But they're already miles behind, so you might as well, take the medicine, take the extra 10 laps, and just treat tomorrow as a completely separate day, because it's a long way to come to then not do any running on Sunday.
And all the more so with the split we've got here. If it was 6 and 6. A bit less so, but with a 2-hour and a 10-hour, this being the 2-bit, you've got to take a 10-lap hit. They're in the pits now anyway. What have they got to lose? I absolutely concur, Johnny. They've got a whole 10-hour race tomorrow. Take the 10 laps and just get on with it and go and get that data and get a result tomorrow as well. And you say it's a long way to come for sitting in the pits. They can do an all-nighter. They've got loads of time yet.
And GTX.
What else are they going to do? Go out and enjoy themselves?
Well, that's certainly possible.
Would you rather go out in Budapest or be working on a vortex in the pit lane? It's obvious. Don't answer.
It's an interesting question.
Answers on the postcard, please, to the commentary
Well, maybe
box.
there's room for both. I mean, you know, the work's not going to take all night, is it? And places in Budapest are certainly open all night. So you can fit both in, for my money. They're an hour behind, is the point. So, you know, another 10 laps is really nothing. What's that, another 20 minutes? Well, it's probably be about 15 minutes further back. But when you're starting with only 60 minutes under your belt, well worth doing that. So Gilles Courtois, who's not actually raced for 5 years, but he has previously had events with Team Ultran with their Peugeots, and brilliant to have the Frenchman as part of the 24H series once again. Not quite sure why it's been so long, but hopefully he'll get some more running together with his teammates tomorrow, Philippe Bonnel and Nicolas Nobbs in the Vortex V8. Out of the pits goes Sabino Di Castro in the 955 Willi Motorsport Porsche. So that car has been semi-repaired, certainly fueled and serviced. So they did tyres, they will have done fuel, and the car retains its class lead, running as high as 7th position in the GT series as well. And headlights definitely on for the final 30 minutes, where it's set to get rather dark, particularly out in the back section, away from the start-finish line, where there's lots of artificial light. What I don't know is quite how dark it gets around turns 8, 9 and 10. Potentially very.
I would suggest so, and say we're 21 minutes off official sunset at a local time. So this is going to get very, very interesting, this last 30 minutes. As you said, certainly in varying parts of the circuit as well, and unlike other 24-hour venues or 12 hours endurance venues, where it is you've got pit lanes illuminated, etc., etc. We haven't got that here. We have Lucas in the pits.
Yes, my microphone has been to the refueling area and now it's back up and running with Thomas Gostner, who just climbed out of the number 58 Mercedes AMG after a very, very long stint. Thomas, we were actually surprised why your car can stay out for so long.
I don't know. We have the same fuel as the other ones, but I was very lucky, and I drove until the lamp of the fuel was coming up, and then I went out. So that's it.
And it was a very exciting stint for you as well, because there was such a tight battle for the lead in the beginning.
Yeah, it was very, very, very nice at the start, but at the end, the first turn, we touched with somebody, but luckily it's not big damage. Everybody could go ahead, and the race was very nice.
What's next? Dinner now?
Next dinner.
Dinner now?
Yes, now dinner.
And that's well deserved. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So Thomas Gostner, we heard from son David earlier on in the piece, because it was David who set the qualifying time to put the car nice and high up, and of course it was a frenetic start as well for Thomas, just running out of cold brakes into turn 1 on the first lap and slightly misjudging the braking area. So contact was made with the number 91 Porsche. But that at the moment is not having an impact, because Ralph Bone able to produce very impressive lap times and with great consistency as well. His best a 145.5, his last a 146.7, so only just over a second slower than his best to date. And Ralph Bone actually working lap 50 as we speak. The sun setting, a real sight to behold here at the Hungaro Ring, with the sky getting more and more gold with every second, and that's starting to have an impact on the colour schemes of the cars as well. Car Collection Motorsport Audi of Martin Rump, 13.7 seconds away from Ralph Bone. It's interesting that the tyre wear on the Audi and the Porsche looks to be about the same now. What I can't remember is when the Audi came in for its fuel, whether the 500 Car Collection Motorsport car also did tyres. But certainly the decision for the 91 Herbert Motorsport car to change Hankooks seems like a good one now, because, you know, we're a long way into this second stint of the race. We're just over 90 minutes into Ralph's efforts for today, and he looks to be in a much better position than Charles Espenlaub, who is 40 seconds further down the road. Remember, if you're in the GT3 category, we're only focusing on the cars within GT3 to stay on the lead lap of that particular division. So if you're in GT3, of course, if you're in other classes, then you're focusing on your class leader. But cars that are likely to finish off the lead lap, the JR Motorsport BMW, at this stage, 5 and a bit seconds down, actually from the MP Racing car, so even further down than from the race leader. I think we've got at least 4 cars on the lead lap. Rutronic Racing by TECE Audi is a slight question mark for Sven Herberger. In the TCE category, the number 1 car that leads the class, which is currently being fueled in the pit lane, has only a 3.4 second lead over Rick Breukers. That will alter as soon as Rick crosses the line, but they are definitely going to be close to one another, I think, and be close enough by the end of this first segment of the race. And then there's a slight question mark about the AC Motorsport and the Audi RS3 for Mathieu Detry being shown at this stage as a minute back. So that should be fine to keep the AC Motorsport car on the lead lap. There have been difficulties, though, for Jasmine Preissig. Well, not necessarily difficulties, but just a pit stop that's just happened for the 112 Autoromo Motorsport car. Interesting tactic for that VW to make a pit stop. Maybe she just needed fuel, but has that now taken the car off the lead lap, and an unassailable lead therefore for the sister car as we can go back to Lucas in the pits.
Yeah, and I'm already chatting to Fabrizio Broggi, who got out of the Porsche with the bodywork damage on the front right corner, and maybe Fabrizio is able to explain where this comes from. Fabrizio.
Well, it was coming down the sun, so you couldn't see very well coming out of the corner. And I lost the car, I controlled it, and then I lost it again, probably coming from being a bit tired at the end of my stint. I tried to avoid the barrier, but fortunately I touched it not so hard. And we only broke a bit of the front bumper, so the plastic got inside. Fortunately, nothing really got damaged. The handling was still excellent. I could start again and trying to make up the time, and the car is good. So I was lucky.
That sounds all right, Fabrizio. But as I listen to you, it seems to me that it's quite hard physically as well to drive a Cup Porsche around the Hungaroring.
Well, Hungaroring is not easy at all. I don't know if I arrived to this race not as trained as I did in Barcelona, but I'm finding it a bit harder right now.
And what is your big target? I mean, obviously we are now almost 2 hours in, but the big part is coming up tomorrow with another 10 hours. What's your big target for this race?
Well, this race we want to is actually being the only in the class right now. We want to train between us a good change, a good change of pilots and everything, so as to learn and improve for the next races, because that's a part that we have to work on.
And I understand it's actually 2 teams combined in one with your team.
Yes, we have an original Romanian team with which I started in Creventic many years ago, and an Italian team that we met during one of the races in Navarra, and it was a good feeling in between, and actually is a fantastic mix-up between the two in the organization. It came out quite a winning team, sincerely. So we are very, very happy and lucky that we managed to put them together and they decide to work together.
And that adds up to Willy Motorsport by AB Motors, as you can see on Fabrizio's overall. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
I'm sure he will enjoy his evening because his car's in a strong position, and as he said, turned into a winning team. As he said that, his voice went up 2 extra octaves because he's so excited by the season they've had so far. Winners in Mugello for the 12 hours back in March when it was the same driving lineup. So Fabrizio joined by Nicolai Sergui George and Sabino Di Castro, and they also took victory in the Willy Motorsport by AB Motors Porsche last time out at Barcelona in the 24 hours. So not only can they win a 12-hour split affair, but also the full 24 hours run non-stop as it was in Barcelona. didn't take part at Dubai, but they've done all of the European races, Willie Motorsports, and at the moment on course for another victory, but we have got a small matter of 10 hours still to be contested, and the 21 minutes that remain today as well. Now, is this a positive move for Vortex? Because this car's been in the pits for just over an hour, but it is back on the pit apron with a driver installed, and they are certainly showing signs of this car being able to rejoin the race. So an hour back, Snowy, but a chance at least to get some running in the remaining time tonight. And let's hope that actually they don't need to end today out of Parc Fermé, so they don't have to take the extra 10 laps as a penalty.
Exactly what I was just going to say. We talked about that a few minutes ago, but it didn't matter taking it. But if they don't have to, why should they? And they've got it going. You say there's only 20 minutes left of this race to go, but you can circulate round for those 20 minutes. You say they can afford to go out in Budapest tonight and relax a bit. They're only on track at 8:30 in the morning anyway, so they rock up at about 8:25 and push it out, and away it goes.
Exactly. I mean, that's the benefit of Parc Fermé.
Isn't that how you do it?
Very little prep necessary.
There's nothing you can do to it. You can't, like, you can go and touch it. You can't even go and polish it. So
no.
Yeah, it's out. It's job done. Those boys wanted a night out, didn't they?
There you go. That
Get
was
it out in the race.
That was the driver.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Another penalty has been issued. This time, now 91 Porsche gets a penalty. 10 seconds worth of a penalty for exceeding the maximum refueling amount during the Code 60. We talked about the 91 Herbert Motorsport Porsche pitting during the one and only caution of the race so far. But remember, if you do decide to pit during a Code 60, you can only take half of your fuel allocation on board. They have obviously exceeded that.
And that's going to destroy its lead at the moment with 20 minutes of this race to go. It's got a 17-second lead. Now it's going to serve a 10-second penalty, which is going to leave that with a 7-second advantage over the Car Collection Motorsport Audi, driven by Martin Rump, somebody who stayed in that car from the very start, hasn't he? Martin stayed in that car as well. So that's going to slash that lead. So a little bit of drama as we head into the last 20 minutes. We've talked consistently about this being a different philosophy, a different strategy, a different way of thinking for these teams and drivers. And yet again, endurance racing, it's the rules have caught them out. And they take on a little bit too much fuel, and all of a sudden you think you've got it done, all nice and settled, 20 minutes to go, just run it round, Parc Fermé overnight, 10 hours tomorrow. Actually, you take a little bit too much fuel on board, and we're taking 10 seconds off you.
Now the question is, normally the rule is that you have to serve that at your next stop. The car made a stop during the Code 60. It hasn't been in since then, so it's probably due for a stop in the next 5 or 10 minutes, because these cars can very rare. Well, they can just about do over an hour, but much more than that, like an hour and 15 at full green flag speeds, near impossible. So we're now at 11 minutes past 6. The Code 60 came to an end at 7 minutes past 5. So car 91 is due for a stop anytime soon, and therefore will have to call by the penalty box for 10 seconds. And by the time the car has made the stop and returned to the racetrack, it could well have conceded the lead by that point. Of course, the Audi number 500 will have to stop as well, but without needing to call by the penalty box. So this will definitely even things up at the sharp end. And the time that the Audi, Car Collection Audi, would have earned back again anyway, because the cars will start side by side bright and early tomorrow morning, they may be nose to tail by the end of the 2 hours on the racetrack. This is lap 55, just over 17 minutes to go of the 7th edition of the Hankook 12 Hours of Hungary. And into turn number 1 goes the 720 RD Sainz Lamborghini Huracan of Aldrius Butkavicius, with Rick Breukers now in the fueling area. So this is a relatively late fuel stop for the Red Camel Jordan NL Audi as well. How many times has AC Motorsports Audi stopped? Twice too, so that shouldn't need any more fuel before the end of play today. And does that mean, therefore, that Mathieu Detry will be the overnight leader? 188 certainly leading the TCE series at this stage from the Red Camel Jordan NL Audi. And then the Autorama Motorsport VW Golfs that have both only stopped once. And, well, with 2 hours running, the Golfs probably don't need to stop again. We're 6 and a bit minutes into this stint for Konstantin Kletzer, so he'll be absolutely fine to the finish, as will Jasmine Preissig. But Mathieu Detry and the AC Motorsport Audi could have pulled off a blinder here to be leading the class for the overnight stop-off.
Just treated a few moments ago to some onboard footage there, Johnny, of the 701, the returning Vortex, returning to the race Vortex of Nicholas Nobbs at the wheel of that. And I was just watching that a little bit, and just for listeners, in fact, we're back with it again for a moment now, and I'm really quite surprised at how much he's having to saw at the wheel and work that car through the corners. It's certainly just back out there. It seems to be an awful lot of work on the front end of that car, which I'd have thought I'd expect it to be more stable. It doesn't look it much from the outside, but from the inside, it seems to be doing an awful lot of sawing at the wheel, which just surprised me. I just wonder if there's maybe a tyre issue or something there. I'm just a little bit surprised. It doesn't look the easiest thing to be handling. I know it's got that large and big, as Lucas described it, big General Motors V8 in the back of it.
Yes.
But it just looks a little bit ungainly at the moment, and I'm not being cruel. It just doesn't look like it's quite at one with the track at the moment. It's certainly holding up a couple of cars as it goes into turn 3, down through the dip where turn 3.5 is, and up to turn 4.
Just stamping home that point. Yes, that's the way round they are, and it's definitely a climb to turn 4. I was thinking it was downhill there, although I've never actually walked this track, so
I'd love to hear you doing downhill.
Maybe I should
downhill skiing commentary. It'd be mega.
There he goes uphill again.
Yeah, we start at the bottom and
I've no idea how he's gaining all of this momentum whilst he's going uphill. But the Vortex is very much aero-dependent. I mean, as are these GT3 cars these days. But you would have thought that the smoother approach is the more beneficial for the lap time. But as you say, the balance of the car with a massive V8 in the rear, it doesn't weigh a great deal.
And that's my point. It's absolutely not a criticism or a judgment. It was just
it's observation,
me.
Isn't it?
Hang on, that just doesn't look like the easiest thing to get around the track, and we've just been talking about getting it back into the race, and so pleased about that. And it's only got 20 minutes to go, 13 minutes for this to go, 14 now, but it's got 10 hours of this to do tomorrow. So that just looks like there's a little bit of a handful there.
Yeah, going sideways is not gaining lap time, and of course you're wearing your tyres at the same time as well, so there may be the need to keep switching to brand new Hankook rubber at every single stop for that car. Fuel consumption should be pretty good actually, because it'll weigh less, I'm guessing here, but it should weigh less than a GT3 car, although the V8 is certainly rather cumbersome, although sounds fabulous, particularly when the car leaves a stationary position in the pit lane. Now, this is a pit stop that I thought AC Motorsport might be able to get away without doing, but from the lead of the class, surely they're going to concede the TCE lead now to Autorama Motorsport's Konstantin Kletzer, who hasn't got ahead of Rick Breukers in terms of road position, or rather on the track. I think that came virtue of the fact that the Red Camel Jordans.NL Audi has pitted for a second time, whereas the VW Golfs have not yet. So Konstantin Kletzer is in second place and should be close enough, I think, to retake the class lead in car number 1, because the AC Motorsport 188 Audi that came in as the class leader should now concede it. As a moment or two ago, the 91 Porsche of Herbert Motorsport was on the inside of the number 18 Sven Herberger driven Rutronic Racing by TECE Audi, and that, though not a positional change, was a car overtaking another for a lappery, if you know what I mean. So the cars were on different laps, so it didn't actually improve the Porsche's position because it was leading. And 57 laps now completed for Ralph Bohn's Herbert Motorsport Porsche. Still, it's only pitted once. Again, there's a question mark as to how much fuel might be on board. And I'm going to have to readdress the fact that these cars can do only just about an hour, over an hour, because clearly from the performance of the 58 Mercedes not too long ago, that was able to do an hour and 15, maybe even an hour and 20. And maybe the Porsche is going to be similar in terms of fuel consumption. The Audi number 18, though, for Rutronic Racing is arcing its way on the inside of turn 14. via the pit lane entry. Oh, and very nearly runs into the back of the 91 Porsche. So I was right to a degree for the race leader. It was needing fuel. And first of all, it's got to stop off in the penalty box for the much talked about 10-second penalty. And this, remember, is because of the car exceeding its refueling amount during its first pit stop. Felt like quite a quick 10 seconds, but I didn't have a clock on it, and I'm sure they were fully on the ball there. But as the Rutronic Racing Audi nearly piled into the back of the Porsche nearly stopped in the wrong place as well. Nearly did a Sebastian Vettel there in his Aston Martin and called off at McLaren instead. But the Porsche readdressed its line. It's come in at an oblique angle as a result. That's because the crew from Rutronic Racing, from Car Collection, were ready to receive their 500 numbered Evo 2 R8, and that was a bit of a distraction for Ralph Bone, who has now found the Herbert Motorsport crew. And the stop was made, although no driver change necessary, because still the drive time should be okay. Having thought about that, though, I mean, there is a chance that Ralph Bone will exceed the 2-hour marker, although bear in mind, of course, the pit stops aren't included in that, so yeah, no, should be okay. Any time spent in the pits doesn't count towards your total drive time.
I would say it's going to be tight, though,
it will
Johnny.
Be, yeah, it will be tight.
I'm sure, as ever, you're right. You've got a handle on it, but it is.
My worry
is tight.
My worry is you run 2 hours today, but it's never going to be exactly 2 hours because you've got to take an extra minute or so into account depending on where you are in relation to the checkered flag. However, a pit stop is going to take 2 minutes, and they've now done 2 pit stops, so there'll be 4 minutes underneath. Any extra shouldn't take them over the magic 120-minute marker. 101, still something coming out of the back of the Red Camel Jordans.nl Audi RS3. This is a brand new car, as far as I know.
Has that just come into the pits and had a refuel?
It is on an well, it had just done a pit stop.
Yeah,
the second stop.
It's just that because it's a complete stream. You can see it's coming out of an overflow pipe. It's not just sloshing around the boot. That's a very definite out of a spout, a pipe exit or something. That's the car we commented on at the very beginning of the race that just overfueled, and it's living up to its reputation of a TCR car and just having a little bit too much fuel in it.
Well, it tells us that it's absolutely brimmed.
Does that,
doesn't it, rather? So the 101 car will head round turn 14 now and is therefore all set up for the opening running tomorrow morning at 8:30. Should comfortably do an hour, maybe an hour and a half actually. And remember, driver changes are permitted overnight. There are 1 or 2 cars that might actually be credited laps overnight because remember, your position in the class is dictated by your class leader. Sometimes the GT series leader can be in a very awkward position and actually falsely separate cars by a lap. So for instance, let's say the TCE series is separated by 10 seconds at the end of the 2-hour running today. If the GT series leader is in between the first and second place cars in TCE, it will put a false complexion on that and make it appear that the second place TCE car is a full lap down. And that's not the case. We found that the championship was falsely penalising cars because of that scenario. So there's a very complicated and clever calculation that's done overnight. And if necessary, certain cars are given laps back again for the restart tomorrow. And if that is the case, I can sort of delve deeper into the explanation when we come back on air tomorrow morning, because talking about it in a kind of theoretical point of view, I don't get anywhere. But sometimes,
abstract.
Yeah, it becomes quite abstract. I mean, for instance, the Golfs are 8.5 seconds apart, but if Ralph Bone got between the two of them, then that would automatically put the 112 a lap down, and that's unfair because they're in reality only 8.5 seconds apart. So that is rectified overnight these days. It wasn't always the case. Konstantin Kletzer of Austria in a car that's sort of carrying the Austrian colours, although they are a Swiss team, Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing. Kletzer across the line, leading the class, now only by 7 seconds. So that was a good lap from Jasmine Preissig, buying back some of the time in the 112 chasing car. And Rick Breukers, who was leading prior to that final pit stop for today, slips back to 3rd position and ahead of Mathieu Detry. No, Detry gets the place. And again, this is all about the order they've returned to the track from their second and final stop for today. So the order is Kletzer for Autorama, Preissig for Autorama, then the AC Motorsport Audi, the Mathieu Detry, and then the Rick Breukers Red Camel Jordans.nl Audi. But they are all on the lead lap, crucially, and will start side by side tomorrow. There won't be these gaps at the restart at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Inside the final, 6 minutes, and we are now 2 minutes beyond, 3 minutes beyond official sunset time. There's still just about enough ambient light. All the cars will have headlights on, but you know, even if on the live stream the cameras are able to pick out in the darkness far better than the human eye can the cars, but I still think there's enough light in the sky to know where you are on the racetrack.
Yeah, so the camera always changes it, doesn't it? It just looks...
It makes it look brighter than it is.
Exactly.
But it's not pitch black out there by any stretch of the imagination.
No, a long way off. But I would have thought that certain parts of the circuit, the higher parts we're looking at now, that's up at top of, was that turn 4, 5? And it's not 4.5, 4 into 5. I meant 4 as in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for avoidance of doubt, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you.
It's the higher part of the circuit where it goes uphill, by the way, Johnny. Not downhill, it goes uphill at that part. But it's certainly looking a little bit darker up there.
I'm just nodding sagely.
Yes. Patiently, I think. So it's like a parent does with a toddler.
Okay, yes.
I know that look.
Might be said. Could be said. The 210 Munkoff BMW, for whatever reason, just not quite been at the races in this first segment. Now, it's the only TCX entry, but I did think, I mean, the car just looks like it's going to be fast. And when you compare it to a TCR car visually, you'd think it would be quicker than the TCR car, but it just shows how much TCR racing has come on in the last 5 years or so. I mean, it's dominating now. It's the global touring car category. The World TCR Championship, of course, which replaced WTCC a few years ago. And you can go 10-lap sprint racing in the TCR cars. You can go 12 and 24-hour endurance racing in them. But the M4 GTR, with the flared wheel arches, the monstrous rear wing, looks fast even when it's standing still in the paddock. The unfortunate thing for Munkoff Racing is that they are virtually a lap back now from everybody else in the TCE series.
It's a very purposeful looking car, isn't it? And it's I think it was a phrase that Martin Brundle used years ago about Formula One cars, that they should look like they're doing 200 miles an hour standing still. And it should have that wow factor when you look at it. And that BMW does that. And we concentrate so easily on the GT3 cars in this and NLS and other series because they're up at the front there, SP9 or whatever category you want to call them. But, you know, GT3 world homologated cars. And we very easily overlook these GT4 cars, which is where the championship is won from. And these TCR cars, don't forget, carrying the number ones because they get to win the championship. The GT3 cars get the glory and all the attention because they're at the front of the race.
Yeah.
But the champions, the smart money, if you like, almost, is on the, as you say, buy a car that is multi-layered, can go into different championships. They can race it wherever in the world you've got. So basically, it's down to, it's not how many series, it's not where can we race, it's how much money have we got to be able to go and race it, because there's always something going on, certainly prolific in Europe. We can do that, so NLS and Creventic, as you say, the Hankook 12 hours are sitting here. But they're a serious piece of racing car as well, not to be underestimated. And a great, some of the people, we say it's a feed a bit to the upper classes. Well, no, it's not really, because it's its own category, and this is where the champions come from. And we saw it a few rounds ago, I think it was earlier this year, when the BMW Junior team at NLS, they run an M2 in that category as well. And they put, I think it was Ben Tuck from the M6, because they were moving drivers around, part of their junior program and their academy, moving drivers around in the top car, the M6 GT3. So they put Ben Tuck rather than say, well, you're not missing out on a race, mate, we're going to put you in an M2. And as you said, initially our thoughts, I think you and I covered this last weekend, was, what, I'm in a TCR? Well, no, it's valuable experience. If for nothing else, it puts you amongst the cars that you're normally driving, and you get to see what it's like to race one of those. How do you keep out of the way? Where's it quick? Where is it isn't? And you said even that Vortex with that great 6-odd litre V8 in it, it's not exactly steaming past TCR cars. They're a serious bit of kit.
It's almost the total football way of doing things, like total motorsport, I suppose. But in total football, you play people out of position so that you know how you would like to receive the ball from a completely different position on the pitch. Like you say, put a driver in a slower car to know about placement and where ideally a car needs to be then when you're in the faster car next time out. And it's all very well.
The same analogy. Greater understanding of,
it's all
of the
very
big
well
picture.
to think I'm a GT3 driver. You must get out of my way. But unless you've driven one of the slower cars and know its restrictions,
absolutely,
you don't know how easy it is to get off the racing line. And actually, the instruction for the faster cars is to stay away from the racing line and use your power, use your manoeuvrability to get around and to ensure that the car that's being lapped can stay on the racing line.
It's often repeated, but it's always the faster car's responsibility to get around the slower car.
It is. It should be. Yes.
What you want to do is one of the things you always do when you get to coaching new pupils and newcomers and youngsters to it or whatever it is. If you're in a slower category car, you have got as much right to be there as anybody else. But the one golden thing you must do is stay on the racing line.
Yeah.
You stay there, and it's up to the quicker guys to get round you.
Now, we're on the last lap. The 91 Porsche just looked a little bit sluggish coming out of turn 3. Just compare it to the pace of the VW Golf. The Golf, I don't think it's just been overtaken by the Porsche.
Well, it's down 15 seconds on its last lap
well,
time.
so that's not a trick of the light, should we say. This is a genuine drop-off in speed.
Yeah, its last lap was a 2 minute close to a 1:45. It's down 15 seconds on lap time.
Okay, bizarre. So is this maybe
fuel saving, I reckon?
Well, yeah, potentially. Well, then again, the Porsche's been in, hasn't it? It came in fairly late on, so maybe to put it into a good position for tomorrow, or is it maybe helping out the fact that now where is the 92? Are they trying to get the 92 car, the sister car at Herbert, back onto the lead lap to make sure that it gains a place? The 92's right behind it, so that I think is the correct theory. Here comes the 92 car of Bobby Gonzalez and will unlap itself on the race leader Ralph Bone. So they weren't short of fuel in the 91 car. They are trying to ensure that both cars from Team Herbert start on the same lap tomorrow. This car will start from the second row, the Bobby Gonzalez machine, and that is a nice bit of teamwork for the German crew that have won 3 races already this season. We should never doubt them, should we? Or the fact that there's a problem for the 91. So the 2 hours is up. That's the first segment of the race done, and a little bit of confusion from the commentary point of view for Ralph Bone. But in fact, everything was in hand for Precoat Herbert Motorsport, and they will finish with both of their cars on the lead lap after a very slow run to the flag, a 2 minute 16.5 compared to the 1:45.5, which was the car's best, so 30 seconds slower than normal. But now the reasons become obvious. A great drive for Martin Rump, the only driver at the wheel of the Car Collection Motorsport Audi R8 LMS Evo 2. But the Estonian has really put himself in a good light for the first action ever in his career in the 24H Series. Gets the 500 car home in second position, and we're now waiting for Charles Espenlaub in the CP Racing Mercedes to finish third and also on the lead lap. What do you reckon about the strategy there then, Snowy?
Well, a brilliant spot by yourself there, Johnny, on that great call from Hubert Motorsport there. I didn't see it myself. I just thought, bit of fuel saving. Is there something? Is it going to be a drama? It can't be the car. It's a Porsche. Surely Hubert can't have got the fuel wrong, whatever. I was racking my brains, and you just saw straight through it and got it. You're absolutely spot on. But with 2 corners to go, we said it at the beginning, didn't they, on the grid about getting the car staying on the last lap. What was the strategy? I think Lucas asked the question, and you said, yeah, if they keep the cars on the same lap, the lead lap, then we know what we're doing for the next, and that's exactly what they've done. And they've completely engineered that big picture. Think of the big picture. Don't take the glory. Perfect. Just an absolute exemplary strategy from Hubert Motorsport there.
TCE is also not... Well, Herbert didn't get the 1-2. They did get both cars on the lead lap. Autorama Motorsport did get a 1-2 finish, and there was only 1.6 seconds separating Konstantin Kletzer in Golf number 1 and Jasmine Preissig in Golf 112. So the white and red car leads home the new livery for this weekend, the green colours for car 112, and absolutely nothing between the VW Golfs, the pause, the overnight pause. There'll be even less between them, of course, tomorrow when they'll be side by side on the TCE Series grid. 5.4 seconds further back, the AC Motorsport Audi RS3 LMS with the DSG gearbox, Mathieu Detry from memory, was the only driver at the wheel of the 188 through the whole of the 2 hours. And also on the lead lap should start Rick Breukers or whoever they choose at redcameljordans.nl with a new car for the Dutch team, the Audi RS3, to match AC Motorsport, and car 101 finished 1 minute and 11 seconds down. But of course they do buy back quite a bit of time, and I think are in a good position on fuel for the restart tomorrow. Munkhoff Racing, 1 lap down compared to the other TCE series runners. We've seen cars come from further back than that on day 2, particularly because there's so much running tomorrow, so more recovery ground and more opportunity to gather that lost lap back again. The one big disappointment is, of course, for Vortex V8 and their 1.0, which had to spend over an hour in the pits during this 2-hour segment, and Nicholas Nobbs at least did get it to the checkered flag, so they won't be receiving a 10-lap penalty overnight. Confirmation of the positions then after a very slow final lap for Ralph Bone. But great planning, and I'm sure they've probably been thinking about that since the start of the day if the scenario unfolded their way. Car 91 and Herbert Motorsport win the first part of the 12 hours of Hungary from the 500 car collection Motorsport Audi of Martin Rump, Martin Lechman and Nat Berton still to come in that car tomorrow, which is a tantalising prospect. CP Racing, Charles Espenlaub did all the driving today in the number 85. Mercedes finishes 3rd. Bobby Gonzalez and Herbert Motorsport just about squeezing onto the lead lap at the close in car number 92. Then a lap back in the number 18 Audi for Rutronic Racing by TECE will be Sven Herberger. Ruud Olij in the JR Motorsport BMW M6. Car number 2 finishes 6th ahead of MP Racing's Mercedes. They did have a driver change from Thomas Gosner to Carina, car number 58, and Sabino Di Castro finishes the Willy Motorsport by EB Motors Porsche for Saturday at least, just 2.1 seconds away from the MP Racing Mercedes. So that's a close fight. They will start 7th and 8th in the morning. Audrius Butkevicius for RD Sainz Racing Team and the Lamborghini Huracan finishes the first segment of the race in 9th ahead of John Miller's ST Racing BMW M4, car 438. And finally, the Vortex 701, a long way back, just 22 laps completed for the French car and Swiss driver Nicholas Nobbs. In the TCE series, an overnight lead for Konstantin Kletzer in the number 1 VW Golf GTI TCR for Autorama Motorsport. In fact, it'll be a 1-2 in this temporary pause for, Milos Pavlovic did a lot of driving today, and then Jasmine Preissig took over. We also had an opening stint from Emil Heyerdahl, so they've got through quite a number of their drivers already in 1-1-2. AC Motorsports Audi of Mathieu Detry was the only driver for Saturday, and in the overnight pause will be 3rd, 5.4 seconds back, but of course that evaporates overnight. Then the redcameljordans.nl Audi of Rick Breukers, and finally the Munkhoff Racing BMW, the only car not on the lead lap for the restart tomorrow, Marco Poland taking over from Eric Fontaine Munkhoff during the car's only stop. So there you go. That is effectively our grid for 8:30 tomorrow morning. And we'll get some reaction from Peter Snowden about that in a moment or two. But not before we've heard from Lucas Gajewski in the pits, no doubt catching up with some of our overnight leaders.
Ralph Bone in the Herbert Motorsport Porsche number 91. That was a very exciting end for the first part of this race. Before we speak about strategy, Ralph, let's speak about the race itself. How was it for you?
Well, your last question is my wish for the race. My wish was a first clear corner, and as you saw, it went otherwise. Unfortunately, it's always the same guy. So I think the race control should think about it now. It's time for it.
Okay, and then on the last few laps, our commentary crew was fearing a problem for you and for your car. But was that just a strategy tool in order to get the 92 car back on the lead lap?
Well, first of all, I had little problems on the rear. Maybe they have been too hot or something. Then I start saving fuel, and in the end, well, now we're on 1 lap. That's it.
Do you already know your strategy for tomorrow? Who will be in the car at which point of the race?
Well, we didn't decided, sorry, for the race start, but my wish will be the same for tomorrow. First corner, which is clear. Please, everybody, to remind this.
Ralph Bourne, your leader today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So these were the best bits from today, and of course tomorrow there's plenty more to come with 10 hours of the race remaining. Behind me there is Parc Fermé for tonight. Some of the cars will be covered up for the night hours, and I think I should better do the same. Thank you very much for listening and watching today. I'm going to throw back to the commentators, get myself ready for a good night's rest, and then I'm going to see you back tomorrow morning. So from Budapest, good night.
You do know you're committed now to staying in exactly the same place for the next however many hours it is before we're back again at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Lucas. And he will stay there. Be rest assured of that. Snowy, a really entertaining first 2 hours. Shown us very little about how tomorrow's going to pan out, I feel. But we'll be back for an 8:30 start tomorrow.
Absolutely. I said it wouldn't be that entertaining the first 2 hours because teams would be thinking about the big picture tomorrow. That was completely wrong. I said it wouldn't be two races, because they'd all be focusing on this bit being the build-up to the next race. That's wrong. We've done that bit. We've effectively had a 2-hour race, and then we've got a completely separate 10-hour race to tomorrow. So basically, you can kind of wipe the slate clean, and you've got the whole lot again tomorrow. So that's going to be fascinating tomorrow. The only thing that today's really done is shown us that two things. A, we've got a grid for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And as ever with racing, and this level it, never count your chickens. It can always change, and it did.
8 o'clock tomorrow, Central European summertime, for the build-up to Part 2, and it is heavily weighted on Part 2. 10 hours of running of the 2021 Hankook, 12 hours of Hungary to come. Make sure you're with us for a narrative that's going to twist and turn here in Budapest. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.
One championship, 8 races, legendary circuits, drivers from all over the world, one family, one passion, endurance racing. Welcome to the most professional endurance racing series for all drivers, amateurs, semi-professional and professional. Welcome to the 24-hour series powered by Hankook. Can you beat the challenge of 8 endurance races? Will you become the 24-hour series champion for 2021? This is endurance.